Leo's happy. Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk about mentoring. Now, I know as pastors, everybody here has done mentoring. This is a kind of a basic aspect of what we do in ministry. But to be fair, that if we're not all doing something systemized, working together, then what happens is we tend to work against each other. We can all come into a boat with just amazing ability to row a boat, but if we're not working in unison, if we're not working towards a goal, then what happens is we start to fight each other. And we start to get frustrated with each other, and we start to really cause more problems than good. Michael, that's awful loud, brother. Or Jacob, can you turn that down?
It's just fine out here.
Is it? Oh, okay. I'm just old, so I turned 40, and so now I don't like it loud anymore. My metallic is like down low now, so. So mentoring, I love a lot of the stuff that I got out of this great book by Paul Stanley and Robert Clinton. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. It's called Connecting the Mentoring Relationships You Need to Succeed in Life. He says, mentoring is a relational experience through which one person empowers another by sharing God's given resources. The resources varying. Mentoring is a positive dynamic that enables people to develop potential. And this is what we're going to do. Each one of us has different aspects that we have to contribute to people. We have different stories, we have different histories. And so we're going to try to take those dynamics, plug them in with people who are similar or in paths where they may best reflect those dynamics, and try to use that to encourage them, to build them up, and to take what we have learned in life or what we're learning and just encourage other people with them. So why do we need mentoring on the district? Well, first off, we need mentoring to increase the quality, sustainability, and the passion of upcoming ministers through the wisdom, love, and passion of those who've gone before. I've only been in Nazarene for 11 years. I mean, I never even heard of the Nazarene church before that. I wasn't looking for a church. I wasn't looking for God. I was looking for a place to do my wedding. That's it. Now, a lot of people end up in ministry the same way that I do, especially on this district. We have a lot of those who are going through the Alliance program, through the course of study, whom God has called. You know, they come off the streets, the amazing work that we see, you know, here through Sandia, through Holiday Park that Jacob's doing. They come in, they feel called, and they want to move on to this. But realistically, they're not going to seminary. We have to go through the course of study, through NB3C, through the Alliance program that we have now. And what happens is, and I know what happened with me, is you go through this whole thing, you get done, you get your list, you check it off, they put you in a church, and all of a sudden you feel absolutely alone on an island. I felt absolutely ill-equipped, and I hear the story over and over and over again, and it's really sad that this is happening, that this is the truth of it. So what we're going to do through this mentoring is we're going to increase the quality of our pastors so we feel more able to take what we've learned and actually apply it practically, because if there's no practical application to theology, then really we're wasting our time. It's going to help in the sustainability. So we have pastors who can work through process, who aren't burnt out, who are willing to handle even bigger issues in a more graceful and godlike manner. We're going to increase the passion of upcoming ministers, because nothing kills your passion quicker than feeling like you're the only one with it. It is absolutely frustrating, and it tears us down. And so having a mentor is going to take care of a lot of these aspects and ensure that the future generation of pastors coming in are better equipped than some of us were going into this. It's also, I love this, I love Isaac Newton. It's also because we want to do better than we've done before. And it's not to say that those who haven't gone before, you know, Arnie has been preaching since I'm going to stop there. We have a lot of pastors who have done a lot of different great things in our past. But we want to do is every generation of pastors, every group that comes up, our goal should be that they do better than us, than what we have done. Our goal for our children isn't that they reach the goals we've done, it's always that they do better. So shouldn't that be our goals for pastors, that they do more than we ever did, that they reach further than we ever did? And so I love this quote by Isaac Newton: if I've seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. And this is our goal, is to realize that we stand on the shoulders of those who stood on the shoulders of others, for a legacy that can be traced all the way back to the disciples, all the way back to Christ, and a legacy that will continue until the return of Christ himself. So why mentoring? Because we shouldn't do this alone either. I love Dilbert. This is one of the great theological comic strips. Not. ASOC, I'm putting you on special self-mentoring program. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to talk to yourself. I'm the master of non-monetary rewards. This is funny, but this is sad, because this is exactly how I felt my first couple of years into my pastoring. And like I was told, that's wonderful. If you have a problem, feel free to talk to yourself. And this happens a lot. It shouldn't happen. We are going to ensure that every pastor comes in here, knows that they're connected, knows that they have a group, that they have a support group that's going to go behind them. And we're going to do this for the continuation of God's prophetic word. I love during one of our last meetings, Bill Nielsen had brought up just the reality of ordination, the reality of our call. That this can be traced back, the laying on of hands, to the laying of hands, all the way back to Christ, to the garden. But this is an amazing thing. This is a beautiful continuation of what God's work has done. And the truth is that God's work has been continuing from the very beginning. His word has always been there. I love the story of Samuel and Eli. Because Samuel is this really great prophet. He does these amazing things, right? I love the story of Hannah wanting a child and bringing him in, so much so that we named our daughter Hannah after her. We love the commitment to give my child to God. And Samuel there in the temple hears the word of the Lord call to him. And Samuel goes to Eli and says, "You called me?" And I read that and I realize Samuel could not, as great as he was not able to answer God's call until one who had gone before him helped him to discern that call. And this is so important for us because I think sometimes I just get the feeling from some that we're afraid to pass on this torch to others because it means nothing for us. But the truth is, this is something great, something amazing that God's doing, this continuation, until Eli finally said, go back and said, "Lord, here is your servant." This is what we get to do, is help them answer the call that God has for them. Listen to him the way he wants. And I know we can get afraid and say, well, what does that mean? Am I an Eli? But this is the reality of the cycle in the Bible, because listen, it wasn't 5 chapters later that the people were chanting, "Samuel, we need somebody else." The next generation that we mentor, that we bring in, we get scared sometimes. Well, they're gonna ruin the church. They're the end of it, and they're not. The millennial generation, the generation after that, there's going to be more after that. They will continue to pass on. This is a cycle that will continue, and we need to, at this point, intercede in this cycle and help to prepare them for not just the next generation, but for the generation after that and after that, so that the continuation of God's prophetic word can be carried with great integrity, so that we can protect it. We have the ability to now to protect this amazing word of God. And so the way I want to begin this morning, I was praying about it, and I really felt like I wanted to begin this morning's service with communion. But because for me, communion is just, it's something that is so amazing. It is the ability to come together at a table, not just with each other, but with God himself, who says, "I would sit with you and I would dine with you." And I want you to do this to remember that you're not alone. That even when you feel like you're the only one there, I am with you. And you sit at a table with many others who do it. And not even many others just in the Nazarene church, but within other churches. So what I want us to do to kind of to celebrate what God is doing and to worship God, I want us to do a very special style of communion. I'm sure, wow. I'm sure we've all participated in the communion by intinction, but everybody here.
If you would hold that closer to the head.
You think?
I think it would.
I'm going to take your word on that, Arnie. You got experience. I got nothing. We're going to each offer the elements to each other. And so what I want to do is I want to ask Jacob to come up as we begin. And we know the symbolism of the bread and the wine. And for me, it's so amazing that Christ knows he's going to die. He knows that his disciples after this are going to be so absolutely afraid. They're going to feel like we have this huge burden. We know this amazing thing that Christ has told us. But they're going to feel so absolutely alone, even in a crowded room. And so he gives them, I believe, that this means of grace, this gift, to help them to understand that they're never alone, that they sit with Christ, they sit with others who share this burden, who share this love. And I want us to really consider that as we do this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer the bread and the wine to Pastor Jacob. And then Pastor Jacob is going to offer it to Pastor Bill, who will offer it to Pastor Ken, and we'll go around and do this to each other all the way through Pastor Larry, who will bring it back and share it with myself. But in the night that the Lord knew he was going to die, he took the bread and he broke it. And he said, "Take this. This is my body broken for you." And then after he did the bread, he took the wine and he gave thanks. He said, "This is my blood poured out for you, the blood of the new covenant. Do this in remembrance of me." Father, help us to be one, to desperately desire that with everything that we are. Pray this in Jesus' name, Lord. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Jacob. I'm already way behind, so we're going to talk really fast. Or are you guys going to listen fast, one of the two? Really quickly, we have a new mentorship program on the district. Many of you are aware of it. Some of you have spoken briefly about it. But here's what it is. As of the New Mexico District year 2017, the New Mexico District has adopted a mentoring program to better support and prepare all district licensed ministers on the New Mexico District. All district licensed ministers will be required to participate in the mentorship program. This is not optional. This is a requirement. All Board of Ministry members in any capacity other than the district superintendent and the board secretary will be required to have a mentoring assignment that meets the specifications listed in the New Mexico District mentoring program as part of their duties. This is obviously not enough people to reach out, and so some of you have received the invitation to come and be a part of the mentoring and be a part of what God's doing, and so I thank you for that as well. In the mentoring program, any ordained clergy in good standing with approval of the district superintendent and the director of the mentoring program is eligible to mentor candidates as well, which is why some of you other ones are here. Okay, there is a director of mentoring. As part of this program, we had to establish a role for somebody to run and to oversee it. And so this year, the director of mentoring is myself. Here's what the Director of Mentoring does. The District Director of Mentoring shall be appointed by the New Mexico District Superintendent and shall serve for a period of 2 years unless reappointed, removed, or resigned from the position. This person shall serve as a liaison between the District Board of Ministry, both ministerial studies, ministerial credentials, of which he or she will be an ex officio member, and the District Superintendent to ensure that every minister seeking the credential on the New Mexico District is under the care and supervision of an advisor and mentor as outlined in the District Mentoring Plan until he or she receives an ordination, elder or deacon, withdraws, or is removed from the candidacy. This is also going to be very important as we proceed here, the act as a liaison, so that we have one person to go through. You guys are pastors. You all know how frustrating it is when everybody takes different channels to go around the block instead of following the order that we have. And so to make sure that we have everything systemized and hopefully in a working order that is effective and efficient, we are going to have an order, and then the Director of Mentoring will be the liaison in this capacity. The tasks of the district superintendent: 1, to assign a mentor to each candidate for ordination in accordance with the district policy. The Director of Mentoring will maintain communication with and records for each ordination candidate to ensure that the mentoring program is functioning as designed. While it's his task, I'm probably going to try to pawn it off on Bill. 3, to provide for training and support of mentors on an annual basis, which is what we're doing here. And I appreciate your grace. We have a very small amount of time to try to put this huge machine into play, and so I appreciate your grace and being here for a part of this. This is what we're going to do to begin that first aspect of the training. 4, to maintain communication with the district superintendent, the chairman of the Board of Ministerial Studies, and the chairman of the Board of Ministerial Credentials in regard to the status and progress of each candidate through the program of preparation. We want to make sure that everybody knows where they're at and how they're acting. Speaking with the lady in Arizona who's doing the same thing here, Carla Derby, she's kind of got the same role that I have here, but in Arizona. She said for her, the thing she noticed was she went to the Board of Ministry meetings, she'd do the interviews, the candidates would come in, and they would do the interview, and the pastors or the elders would say, hey, we have a couple of things that probably need to be noted about this person that were just some flags. And they would make a comment in their file, put it in there, and then that'd be the end of it. And the next year they'd interview them and they'd make the exact same comment and put it in the file. There's no communication happening. And so part of the process of this is to make sure that we do ensure that these things, that we help them with whatever problems that we have, that we prepare even the Board of Ministry and then the Board of Credentials as they go to interview them, to be prepared to look for certain things or to help them in certain areas. To provide training for mentors so that they'll be able to fulfill their responsibilities appropriately. I want to train you to be able to do this. I know that most of you, really all of you here, have much more experience than I do at this. All I'm trying to do is bring us together so that we're following one plan. And yes, I am aware that there are a million ways to skin a cat, but we are going to follow one track, and so that we are all doing the same thing and we can work at least together without beating each other up. To arrange and supervise initial meetings and assessment of candidates with mentoring team as outlined in the mentoring plan. I'm going to try to bring people together, set up meetings, get this going, get the momentum at least on each relationship going until they're up and taking off on their own and take on their own life, which again in this first year I'm going to ask a lot of grace. We're getting everybody set up at once instead of after it's running where it'll be just the new candidates coming in. To receive quarterly reports from candidates regarding progress and interaction with mentors and advisors. Part of the task will be to make sure that everybody is doing this and they're turning in their paperwork about it. I double-clicked. To schedule and oversee mentorship training days at sites agreed upon by the district superintendent. We'll get a little more into this, and this is going to be another aspect that while I'm in a hurry to get it going, I'm not in a hurry to do it wrong. And so I would almost rather wait a little bit and make sure we get it started properly than just to get it done for the sake of getting it going. 9, to provide reports to the Board of Ministerial Studies and the Board of Credentials, in advance of their regular meetings, listing candidates with mentors and advisors, as well as record of meetings, attendance, and reports received. So it's a part of the task will be when we go into our interviews every year, mid-year or end of year, the director of mentoring will go in and say, okay, quickly, here's some of the people that are going that we probably need to talk about beforehand, who's going to interview so-and-so, here's some things that their mentor reported that we might want to address, or this may come up, but they're already taking care of it. Don't panic, which, we do. We panic a lot, right? And then there is the process. For the process, I'm going to leave this to Larry, because he is process.
Thanks. I just came back from a meeting in Estes Park with the denomination, and the meeting is the Estes Park consultation, which asked the question about how do we prepare ministers for the coming generation. And one of the things that we came out of from that meeting, we're down to the place where we're starting to talk specifically about process, is that we need to think not in terms of preparation, but ministerial formation. And when you think in terms of formation, you think differently. You think about things like mentoring. And as a result of these conversations that we've been having, I've been involved in this for 5 years at the denominational level. I've been involved with this forever at district and local church level. The New Mexico district right now is really way ahead of the curve of the denomination. Every district in the denomination is moving to something similar to what we're doing, being more involved in the formation of pastors and coaching them and providing for them a way to be fully formed people. Back in the day when I was called to ministry, the church said, great, which one of our schools are you going to go to? And they shipped me off to college and seminary, and then the colleges and seminaries delivered back to the district a quote-unquote fully formed pastor ready to do his work, which I was more fully formed than our pastors are now, academically anyway, and I was able to do some things that a lot of our pastors aren't able to do in terms of theological processing of what I was doing. But what I didn't know is really the practical business of how do you actually do this. And so what we've recognized is partially because of the cost of college education now. Is currently a Nazarene minister that goes through one of our colleges and seminary is going to graduate with $100,000 in school debt. Well, I don't know about you, but I didn't get paid that much in my first pastorate. I probably haven't made that much in the total time that I've served in the Church of the Nazarene. So what is happening is ministerial formation is going to the district level. And given that, then we have to be much more deliberate about our processes on the district. And that's what's kind of created this whole conversation on our district, is how do we get deliberate, formalized, systematized in our process. We really want the process to begin all the way back at the local license. And so we want to start working with students from the time they get their local license. So far on our district, our processes have been set up so that we really engage a student initially when they're ready to get their district license. And we really want to back that up, and Bill's going to talk about that in a moment, but we really want to get people on our radar as soon as they get a local license so that they already have some coaching in the early parts, and they're already getting used to having a relationship with the district. And the district is seen as coaches who come alongside people who have a call to ministry, not as barriers to somebody's ministerial formation anyway. So we have to help local pastors get through the process. Really, in our district, there's really only 4 or 5 pastors who have more than one local licensed minister, and they're pretty adept at the process. But what we want to help those pastors do is we want to help them to connect to Bill right away, so that as soon as somebody gets a local license, and I recognize there are some pastors who habitually wait about a year to the second local license, which I don't see a problem for that because a local license is kind of a proving ground. Are you really into this? And so there are some pastors who will issue a local license, say, start your classes, and then we'll kind of sit back and see what happens if that person's really committed to it. But early on in the process, we want to get the student connected to Bill so that the first time we meet them is not when they get a district license. And so there are interview guidelines, a request for validation, a verification of credential histories as part of the issuing of a local license, and all of that stuff is at the USA Canada region website, nazarenepastor.org. If you're not familiar with the website, nazarenepastor.org, you need to get familiar. Just about everything you need in terms of your forms and your processes are to be able to be found there. But more to the point, this USA Canada regional website is really specific to all of the forms and processes that we need for USA Canada. You can get to that from nazarenepastor.org, or you can go to that USA Canada region. I will say that General Assembly is going to roll out some new processes for us, and so stay on top of this because General Assembly has all sorts of new things that they're rolling out for us.
It's changed since last General Assembly too.
It has.
A multi-step process, which a lot of people, I've had to help a lot of people through it, other pastors, because it's more difficult.
Right, it is. And one of the things that we want to be doing early on in the process is getting somebody in touch with Bill and getting people familiar with what the process is toward credentialing. And so there's a source book for ministerial formation that they need to go through. There's this relationship with our secretary that they need to establish. And I would encourage pastors, of course this is not directly germane to mentoring, but we want to encourage pastors, as soon as somebody has a local license, let's get them into the process, into the pipeline, so that they're beginning to understand what their academic requirements are. They're beginning to understand how the process works. The Church of the Nazarene deliberately has a process by which it's difficult to get ordained. I don't apologize for that. It's an important vetting process for us. We don't just, let somebody confess a call and tomorrow give them a church. We want them to be vetted and proven and demonstrate all of these things. So Bill is the first person on board in the process after we get through the local church board, and I think, Bill, this next slide invites you to come and talk about that.
The biggest thing for the record keeping is getting the information to me in a timely fashion. Most of the records that I currently have do not have anything about the date of local licenses being issued, and it has become an issue as time goes along and people are being considered for ordination. So that's going to be the first thing. I've gotten actually one in the email. The second is that I have documents on people that are gifts and TIFs and everything else, which makes it extremely difficult for me to manage the record. Now, my record is to keep the boards informed, but you need to make sure that they keep a physical copy of anything. If you're instructing a class, especially now, it's going to be a lot easier because of the new system. But I have asked everybody to assign themselves a single letter and a 4-digit ID so that my email, when it comes in, can sort them out and they can make sure that their documents end up with their files. That's so that when I go to Dr. Lasher and say that Bill Belgie's a level 4, I can be very specific and say, here's the classes that he's completed. Because when we do interviews, that's one of the things that gets always, people are handing me 16 pieces of paper, and that becomes a problem. But if you can give me a scanned copy in a PDF format, and then I can make sure that when Dr. Lasher asks, does so-and-so have this class done? Also, for those who are planning the classes in the next year, if I can say there's 50 people who need X class, that'll be a great planning tool for those that are there. Why teach a class when there's only 2 that are going to need it, but there's 50 that need some of the very basics? So my function is basic record keeping and making Dr. Lasher have all the information that he needs when he needs it. But lastly, if they have academic credentials, have a transcript from a college, I need a copy of it, a physical copy of that, so that I can make an evaluation and try to get the awarding done. Now, I do the grunt work. Dr. Lasher is the final approving authority on something like that. So if I get something that says that he has a degree in tiddlywinks that doesn't really tie into what we're doing, then Dr. Lasher can say, well, I gave him I was too generous or whatever. But that's what my function is in this whole process right now. And it sounds like I'm going to be tied into more of the mentoring program than I was aware of.
So let's talk about that process. That's what I wanted to do. From the time a person receives a call, and they get started in the process, they go to the pastor, they say, I have a call. The pastor vets that person, takes them to the church board. Eventually, the church board awards a local license. At that point, that person should be put in touch with Bill Belgie. What Bill will do is he will have them apply to be placed with the Board of Ministerial Studies. And so there'll be some data that's involved in that, testimony that's involved in that, and there'll be a packet that goes out. So you have to get people involved with Bill right away. And then you also get that person registered with Clergy Development, and the local license has a form to do that. Mentoring is not going to kick in until somebody gets a district license, but we want to get people tracked right away involved. So as a pastor, we need to help pastors understand that there are really kind of 4 ways to fulfill your academic requirements, maybe a 5th. But let's talk about the 4 primary ways. One way is you have previous college or seminary experience, education. And as Bill said, you need to get that information to him via transcript so he can evaluate anything that you've done against the requirements. Now, if somebody has a degree in tiddlywinks, they still probably have an English class. They may have a psych class. They may have a philosophy class. So there may be things that they can be given credit to. So regardless, have them give any college level work record to Bill so that he can decide and evaluate what credit that deserves. And so that's method number 1. Method number 2 is we can send that person off to college or seminary, one of our schools. And if they're a high school graduate, that's a great idea. It's a great way to prepare them. And we want to, as pastors, press them to the highest level of academic preparation that they can manage. So so, we can help them to find their way to college or seminary in one of our programs. If they already have a degree, they're a little older, we have some master's programs in the Church of the Nazarene that are ordination track master's programs. Point Loma's developing one, Olivet's developing one, and NTS has an ordination track online. These are all online. And so if a person has a degree, let's get them working at a master's level, not at a course of study level. Let's get people working at the highest academic level that they can. The third way that we can help them is we can send them to Nazarene Bible College for online education. And so through Nazarene Bible College, a person can either take for credit courses or audit courses in what's called the MPP program. But the Nazarene Bible College offers the 25 ordination courses all online, and a person can do that completely online, etc. Fourthly, however, we now as a district have come in alliance with NBC so that every class NBC teaches online, we will teach face-to-face on the district. And so through our district training center, we will make available all of the courses that a person could take online through NBC. And we'll do probably, are we doing 4 courses, did we decide, or 5 courses a year, Pete? As many as we can, yeah. So, so the advantage of NBC, whether it's the online or whether it's face-to-face on the district, everything a student takes through NBC can be given college credit. So if a person decides, as Raul did later on, I really should have gotten my degree, they can take their portfolio of NBC work back to NBC and basically pay the difference in tuition and get college credit for it and get degree credit for it. So those are the 4 primary ways we want everybody to be trained at a college level if possible. Now, because the denomination has certified the modular course of study as a certified way of completing your ordination requests or requirements, if a person wants to go to NNU online and do the modular course of study, we have to accept it. We are making a modular course level face-to-face experience available to our Spanish-speaking community. And so if we have people that simply aren't able to do college level work and they speak Spanish, we're making that available. Larry Scott's helping us with that. But if it's a Spanish-speaking person and they're capable of college level work, NBC has all of their courses available online in Spanish, so that we don't have to settle for a modular course of study. The idea is we're trying to press the highest possible level of academic exposure that we can. And so the process, once a person gets hooked up with Bill, they're going to get in our pipeline. We'll start interviewing and helping them right away. And then once a person gets a recommendation for a district license, the District Board of Ministry has interviewed them and they're going to get their first district license. Now they're on the mentoring track. And so we want to assign a mentor to somebody when they get their first district license at that district assembly. And they will have a mentor, they'll be part of the mentoring program until they're ordained. And so if that takes 3 years, they'll have a mentor for 3 years. If that takes 10 years, they'll have a mentor for 10 years. Whatever. So they'll be in the process, they'll be in the mentoring process until they're ordained. And then in order to be a mentor, Raul talked about this a little bit, a mentor has to be ordained, they have to have gotten through this mentorship training, they have to continue to participate in training events, and they have to be be committed to the program. Ideally, we want most of our mentors to be members of the Board of Credentials or the Board of Ministry, and we want everybody on the Board of Ministry to be a mentor. Why? Because that means that when a candidate comes to interview with the Board of Ministry, they have an advocate in the room. They have someone in the room who knows them and understands them, and they have a helper in the room. So if something comes up in an interview and we say, you know, this person's just not really clear on their holiness theology, or there's just way too much latent Calvinism in their soteriology, we can look to their mentor and say, we need to work through this issue and help us with that. And the mentor is there, they're engaged in the process, and the candidate never feels alone as they're coming through. And so that's the idea of the process. When we're assigning a mentor, we're going to be thinking about gender, spiritual giftedness. We're going to bring you through a spiritual giftedness survey pretty soon. We're basically going to try to match people with people who have similar giftedness. We're going to be looking at their calls. So, for instance, if somebody's called to pastoral ministry, then we're going to try to hook them up with a pastor. If somebody's called to compassionate ministry, we're going to try to hook them up with somebody who has a compassionate ministry kind of issue. And somebody's called to music ministry, we're going to try to connect call to a mentor. The capabilities. We're just going to be trying to provide the best fit in terms of a mentor, and then we're going to let people have some say in it. So mentors are not going to be simply assigned, but we will have profiles available for the students, what we're calling MITs, Ministers in Training. I like that word better than mentee. Mentee sounds like something you get in a little box, you know, when you need a breath mint or something like that. So we're going to let the ministers in training have some say. So we're going to, there you go, some mentees right there. I got Pete thinking about mentees. And so we'll probably say, here are your choices, choose among them. There are probably going to be some geography involved in some of those considerations as well. So it'll be difficult to assign somebody from Aztec with a mentor from Carlsbad. Although I mentor Raul, and we don't have much difficulty making that connection. And while we recognize that every local pastor has a mentoring function, we want the official mentor not to be the local pastor. Why? Again, so you have more than one voice, more than a little bit of support. And also, if you're Pete, you've got 12 people on your staff that are in process, and you can't be a mentor to all 12 of those. So the pastors, same thing that happens with Dave West. He's got 7 or 8. I imagine up there. I've got 4 or 5 myself. And while I can come alongside that group, and I'm involved in staff meetings and things like that, they really need a mentor that's not me. That can help them, and frankly, they can have both another perspective, and they can talk freely about things that maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to their boss about. And so that's kind of the thinking there. Of course, while the student will have an input in choosing who they want, ultimately the mentor will be assigned. And that'll be Raul's responsibility, and of course he'll talk to me and to Fred and to whomever else in the process. What we're doing on the New Mexico district is where the denomination is going. We are way out in front, which never happens in New Mexico. So I'm really proud of us that we're on here. And I will say also, NBC and Point Loma are fully behind us. They will resource us in every way they can. And so we really have a really neat process coming together here. And while it's going to be really strange for our students, and we've already had some pushback from some people who want to hurry up and get ordained so they don't have to do the mentoring thing. I've led mentoring in other districts, and I've never had somebody who was a minister in training say this wasn't the best thing that's ever happened. They will recoil against it until they get involved. But once somebody gets involved in it, they will discover this is really what helps put the academic training into very practical things. And so I'm really, really excited about what we're getting ready to do.
So as Larry's brought us to so far, this is where we're actually going to begin the mentoring process, and hopefully a bunch of the stuff has already been taken care of. Ideally, we start to become a more systemized district so that all the pastors know what to do, and all the MITs are following through in this same format, and everything's going smoothly, and everybody is working together for one great goal. What we're going to talk about next is the first contact, the first time a mentor meets their MIT. And I don't like the word mentee either. I always think of the manatee, the little sea cow. I'm like, just... Okay, so first contact. The first thing we'll want ideally, and again, we're playing catch up here, because we have a lot of people who are already district licensed, which is amazing. But ideally what this will look like is every time a mentor in training goes to get their first district license, at this point their mentor will have already been assigned to them, and they will walk up with their mentor, and their mentor will go with them to this process of receiving their district license. And I love this. When Larry first shared this with me, and he talked about how amazing this process could look like, and they go up there, they receive the district license with them, and you begin this amazing adventure. I remember getting my first district license. In fact, me and Ken went that first year together, and it was a little overwhelming, a little scary, but it was our way of saying, we're really taking this journey. We're no longer just kind of treading the waters to see what it's like, but we're diving in, and we're going to swim, and we're going to go all the way across this journey wherever it takes us. But then it would end where when we lay on the hands, the mentor and the MIT would have this relationship together where they come up and the laying on of hands for ordination happens, and then their mentor is there with them. They have somebody who has walked this walk with them. And I got to tell you, I think for me this would have been an amazing thing to have. It would have been just so great to encourage me into the next steps that we do. So first contact, ideally, we want them to be walking with them when they get their district license. And this may be the actual first contact. During mid-year meetings or end-year meetings, at that point the Board of Ministry will have basically decided their recommendations. And as soon as the recommendation is approved, at that point the Director of Mentoring, which will be myself in this case, will begin the process of starting to get them into a relationship with their mentor as quickly as possible, but done as well as possible so that they're ready by district assembly. This year's bought us some time because of the General Assembly situation. A formal meeting after district assembly should take place within 60 days of the district assembly. We want them to now formally sit down and talk about what this is going to look like and what is expected. At this formal meeting, the expectations of the relationship need to be established. And this is really important, that we discuss outwardly what the expectations are. We've often said it goes without saying, but it should be said anyway, because we shouldn't assume that everybody knows what we're doing or where we're going or what the point of this is. And as the mentors, you will have the ability to sit down and share with this MIT who, if they're anything like I was at that time, is not really exactly sure what's happening and who you are. Are you here because they need a probation officer, or are you here to keep them in line? And these are really things that I know I would be asking myself, why are they doing this? Who is this person? And so you need to establish with them the expectations of this relationship, of which we're going to discuss more. One of the expectations is the contact method. Hey, how are we going to be meeting? If Pastor Ken's up in Aztec and he's talking to somebody from First Church in Las Cruces, they're not going to meet once a week in Socorro for lunch. There's just nothing that good there to eat. They might try San Antonio, but even that's going to get old after a while, right? So how are we going to meet? What is this going to look like? Are we going to have a phone call once a week? Are we going to do email? Are we going to Skype? Are we going to do many other things? You need to discuss this and have this clearly done before the end of this meeting, what this contact is going to look like. If you're going to do a phone or an email, which I think is going to be the most common, let's be real. We are not like in a NorCal district or even the Arizona district where where all the churches are in the Phoenix region with a few stragglers here and there, right? We are very geographically spread apart. We used to joke that Farmington was in the Colorado district, and people didn't know because it's how it feels. San Juan County is a long ways from Lee County or from Lincoln County. And so phone calls, I think, are going to be the number one way we do this. And I know they can work. I was struggling desperately as a pastor with finding my place, with feeling alone. And I finally decided I'm going to ask. So I asked Dr. Huff, hey, you know what? I need a mentor. I don't even know what this looks like. I need one. And Dr. Huff thought it was funny to hook me up with Dr. Lasher, who takes this very seriously. And I got to tell you, it did. It changed my world for me. And then we have a weekly conversation with, a few weeks we miss here when he goes on vacation. He doesn't think about my needs, only his. Or things like that. But this can be done. Listen, there is no excuse. Me and Larry are across the state. So I am not going to accept an excuse, well, they live there and we live here. Get the phone. Everybody's got a cell phone. Every 10-year-old on the planet has a cell phone. You can call each other. You can talk for an hour a week, and you can make this happen. And I'm going to tell you, an hour is a short amount of time when this relationship develops. And so if you're going to do the phone call, our kind of requirements or recommendations for this plan is that it's at least bi-weekly. I'm not asking you to do this every week, but at least every other week you are in a communication, because things happen very quickly, and in weekly almost isn't even enough for me sometimes. So at least bi-weekly if you're going to do phone or email. If we also want a face-to-face, try to get together triannually. I looked that up to make sure that I did the right word. So at least 3 times a year, you're getting together face-to-face. Maybe you meet at district assembly, say, hey, I'm going to be there. Let's take lunch and let's go together and talk once in a while. I'm going to be in Albuquerque for this, or hey, I'm going to be down there. Try to get together at least 3 times a year face-to-face, so that you can see how you're doing and you know what the person looks like, and just have a little more intimate of a relationship. Some of the expectations of the relationship are going to be established at this first meeting. First off, other conditions such as the MIT, and I know I put the mentee here, I'm trying so hard not to say it because now I can think about it as it's an Altoid. The MIT is to make contact. This part is also very important. Something that got established when we started doing that. You're going to call me, and I thought, what? This is very important that we start to teach something from the very beginning of this process. Is the responsibility and the self-accountability for what's happening. You are offering something to them. This is a great gift that you're offering. I think it's something that we should do, but that is the reality. You are the one who is offering your services, your time, and your wisdom to benefit them. Out of humility, out of respect, and out of responsibility, they need to contact you. And so part of this arrangement is to help to teach them responsibility, so that we don't have people saying later, well, I was going to do this, but this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Welcome to ministry. This is always going to happen. And if you can't handle it at this end of it, or it's not taught at this end of it, then when it happens in ministry, and those of you who've been a pastor for more than 30 seconds know that your plans don't always go the way you want them, that we have to be prepared for all of these things. So the mentee is to make contact with you. They are to make the call. Any other expectations that you have personally? Hey, when you call me, I want you to immediately have certain things ready to go. I'm going to want you to, when you call me, be prepared in front of you with where you're at academically. I don't want you to say, oh, hold on, let me look it up. Maybe you want them to have that. Or we're going to start discussing these questions, and next time we talk, you're going to have these ready for me. We're going to begin in this process, talk in this order. Whatever works for you, we're leaving it there, but set your expectations so you're not on the phone and you start doing like 2 16-year-old teenagers, just have a course going and set this up at this meeting. This is what this is going to look like. The first, I don't know my first context on there. As a mentor, we're going to have different expectations for you. There are basically 2 parts, two primary parts as mentor. The first part of this is as a logistic coordinator. You have logistic expectations of the mentor. The mentor is going to serve in part as a logistical guide. You've gone through this. And so you're going to help them logistically when they say, hey, district's coming up. Do I really need to show up to get my district license? It's probably a good idea. Hey, Have you taken care of your paperwork for that they now require a background check to check your verification of past credentials? They're changing things around, and as Larry and Pete pointed out, they're continuously changing it. So help them to stay on top of that. Help them with the logistics of this. Have you sent your stuff in to Bill Belgi? You know, you talked about you just finished his class. Awesome. Did you get your paperwork sent over to him? I did. Did you send it in a PDF format? No, I took a picture of it and sent it to Bill. Okay, then you didn't send it. If you don't do it exactly right, you didn't do it. And let's start doing things exactly right. We're going to teach the systemization of the program so that it becomes effective and efficient. And I see poor Bill. I like to razz him. He's really fun to razz when we do the interviews. But poor Bill, I just see him wanting to take his head and beat it into a wall many times because we can complicate things, which gives me, honestly, encouragement because I believe people that overcomplicate stuff make really great pastors. That's why we do it. You're going to help them with their educational path. You're going to make sure that they're in the program. Are you enrolled at NBC? Are you doing the Alliance? Are you speaking with Michael Blea and making sure that you're on track there? Are you speaking with Bill Belgi and making sure that you're doing things right, that you're on the right course? Are you in the right class? Well, when it comes to the educational aspect, make sure that they have a clear and a workable plan to complete it. You're going to be amazed how many people just kind of wing and say, well, I'll just wait for them to call me and tell me I need something. We know this, and we need to express this to the MITs because many of them don't know this, but Bill Belgi is not their babysitter. She's not sure what I said. Listen, nobody is. That's why I'm up here. That's why I got this role. Okay? We are not babysitters. The Board of Ministry is not their babysitter. This is real stuff, and this is really important stuff. We talk about ministry. When we come to the pulpit as pastors, we proclaim that what we preach here, that this gospel message has eternal consequences, and it has real consequences in this world today. And so we need to be sure that when we bring up the next level of pastors, they understand the importance of this. This isn't a matter of life and death. This is more important than that. It really is. And so we need to start helping them. Are you doing this properly? Are you following the right path? Do you have a plan to get from here to there? Because if not, you're going to drown. And if somehow you get through the system and you've haphazardly done this, you're at best going to help people drown afterwards. Are they on schedule with their courses? Hey, you made a plan. Are you following through with your courses, and are you keeping up with them? Well, I had a plan, but I didn't take this. Okay, why? Why are you not keeping up with them? Why are you not following the plan that you've made? Is this something real? Is it something that we need to talk about? Well, I thought I could do it, and I could take a vacation, I could do this. Okay, what did we learn from that? Well, we can take this opportunity as mentors and help them to learn from the mistakes and encourage them, but also help them in the why did you? Yes, I'm keeping up with my plan. That's spectacular. What did you do that you think helped you to do that? Because if you're keeping up with your plan, it wasn't accidental. What steps did you take that worked? What things did you change that worked? Let's work on that. Let's continue to strengthen those areas, and let's use those for others. This is an opportunity to encourage as well as steer them in the right direction. Are they sending the proper documentations in a timely manner to the study secretary? Bill is the study secretary at this point. He has established that he wants things in a PDF format. Are they sending in a PDF format? Well, I sent the GIF. Who sends TIFFs? I mean, you have to work hard to do that. I mean, we're working really hard, our MITs are, at doing things the wrong way and making more work so that we're having to straighten out stuff rather than encourage and help and be a better use to people. So as a mentor, your part of your task is to make sure they're doing this right. Did you send it to him in a timely manner? Bill has a certain way that he tells him, I want your memo, I want it written like this. I want this format. I want it done like this. And whether it's silly or not, it doesn't matter. Bill is the one doing the job, and so he gets to say how it's done. And if the MIT doesn't like that, after they're done with ordination, they can come up and say, we'd like to take over Bill's job. They're welcome to that. I'm sure Bill will smile and pray for them deeply. So we need to help them with that. And I believe that once we do this, I'm the most unorganized person in the world. But when you start working organizationally, when you start bringing things together, we know it starts to work out smoother. It's only going to benefit them, and it's going to allow them to focus on God's call rather than always picking up their mess and barely getting by. And I'm also discussing the theology and the application of each course. Oh, hey, what did you just take? I just took church administration. Oh, that was the most painful class I think I took at NBC. Because at NBC you have to post, right? 5 days a week. Do you know how hard it is to post? And back then it was twice a day, something that is meaningful and relevant concerning Robert's Rules of Order. So as pastors, how do we help them with this? Yeah, look, I know that it sounds crazy, but you're going to appreciate it later when you're in a board meeting and everybody's trying to turn this into the time to make decisions. You can actually utilize Robert's Rules of Order to keep a structure, to help the flow, to encourage it, to turn your board meetings into a time of worship and fellowship with structure. You can teach them other things. All right, cool. So you just got done with Old Testament. So how do you feel about that theologically? How does this help to develop you? Discuss the theology with them afterwards and help them to bring it into a practical application. Because again, this is one of the things I love about the Nazarene Church. When taken properly, when done in its proper holiness theology, it is to me the most practical theology I've seen of any other Christian denomination. It has direct implications into the world, here and now. Help them with discussing the theology and the application. The next thing is the Ministerial Candidate Workshop. They get to take a trip to San Diego. As part of that, I'm going to let Pete come and talk.
There's a couple things that I want to say before I get to the MCW. One of the things that I think maybe helps us process everything that's going on here today, everything we're talking about, is that some of you are on the board of credentials, the board of ministry, the board of studies, and what you'll see is that a lot of the things that we need to do as mentors is make sure that we know the process backwards and forwards, and we're guiding our MITs through the process. Some of us have already done that many times, but one of the things that we're noticing as a board, those of you that are on the board, is that we're dealing with things in a board meeting that a mentor should have already dealt with or should be dealing with. And so we're trying to mentor people in a board setting once a year, and it's not effective, because you need more time in front of somebody. And anything, boards, Pastor Raul talked about the Robert's Rules of Order. Boards are not always the most efficient. They're great decision-making bodies. They're not great execution bodies. And so when we're sitting in a board and we say, here's some problems that we have, then we want to send one person out to be the one who executes fixing that problem. So that's the mentor's role in somebody's life throughout the year. And then hopefully the next year we have less problems to deal with. Now, that being said, my role is the MCW coordinator. And one of the things that we talk about, the MCW every year in about March, we go out and we have a planning meeting, district representatives from all of the districts in the Southwest region. By the way, this is something we pioneered in the Southwest region. There were a few districts that were doing something similar, but the Trevecca region just began this same process modeled after ours. And so when you say we're ahead, that's one of the areas that we're ahead, is what we're doing with the MCW. Now, I know a few of you have been through the MCW. One of the things that we do when we meet to plan the MCW every year is we talk about what we're doing to follow up. So we plan the event, we have the event. Now, after the event is over, how do we use the information that we learned? There's some sophisticated, expensive, time-consuming tests and different things that are being done during that process. In fact, we've started, some of you, maybe, I don't know, Rick, have you done the test with somebody before, proctored them for somebody? There's a few across the district that I know have proctored those, and it's literally a half-day process to take all the tests, and then you meet with, when you get to the event, the psychologist you meet with for an hour. And one of my staff said, man, I don't know about meeting with the psychologist. I don't know about all that. I said, don't worry. When you get there, they're already going to know you. They've looked at everything that you filled out. Now they're going to take that, and in an hour, converse with you, talk with you, hear your voice, and they're going to figure out how all the things that they learned about you fit, and they're going to put together a profile that says, here's your strengths, here's what you're going to be good at, here's something you need to watch out for, here's something that I saw that I'm worried about. Now, that is an incredible tool, because after the event, we get back this report that says, here's the things that this person is going to be great at, here's the things that this person maybe needs to watch out for, maybe needs to work on. And what has happened up until now, essentially, is we got back that report, Dr. Huff or I, in the mail, and we've looked at it, and we've put it in a folder and put it in a locked filing cabinet so that nobody can see it. You see the problem here is every year we go back and start planning again and say, are we using what we've learned, or is this a wasted event? Is this wasted time? And in a lot of ways, I think the event has been wasted time because we've not done a good job of using the information that we heard back. Now, one of the problems that we've had over the last few years is when they started the program, the report that we got is very sensitive. There's a reason that we locked it up in a filing cabinet so nobody could see it, is that in a time with a psychologist, there's some things that are shared about childhood traumas and things that I don't think is always appropriate for everybody to know. And you don't need to know. Everybody doesn't need to know in order to help you through your ministry process. So there's a reason that we locked some of that up. Now, that being said, over the last about 3 years, they started giving a non-classified version, a one-page report that they actually send both to the candidate and to the district. And that is a great development, because that one doesn't have all the stories that the candidate told to the psychologist. It just has, this is an overview. Here are 3 educational recommendations we have. Here are 3 practical applications or recommendations that we have. And so those end up being, I read one from somebody that's pretty well educated, but it apparently talked about their desire to be more educated. And so I had a suggestion on one of those. This person wants to pursue their master's degree, and we recommend that they do that and continue their education. There was some things like that. Well, that's a great thing for a mentor to know, maybe even at that first meeting, and say, hey, these are some things that I want to help hold you accountable for that you said you wanted to do, and were recommendations for you. There are also some lists. For instance, I got one back that said this person would benefit from some marriage counseling. There were some things that came out that they really needed some marriage counseling. This person could benefit from some psychological counseling to work through some of their trauma that we don't think they've worked through as well as they think perhaps that they have. For those of us that have been around this process for a while, we know that those are things that come back to haunt ministers later if they're not dealt with in this process. And I think to our own peril and to the peril of our MITs, we lock those up and don't use them. We need to use those. So that one page, my discussions with Raul and Larry and Dr. Huff are that we believe that one page should go to the mentor. Now, what I've done, there's a couple ways that I've dealt with it already, is I've asked, since it goes to the candidate, I've asked the candidate to provide it to me. I had one on my staff this past year that came back and sent it to me. And they said, man, I'm so upset. I'm so bothered. They said that I don't work with people very well. And I read over the report and I said, brother, that's not what it says. It says you're going to struggle in these situations. And by the way, that's the exact same thing I've been telling you. And I've been already trying to work with you on. Now somebody else has told you the same thing. And I think that just proves that we need to work on this. It tells you what you're going to be good at, what you're going to struggle with. And it even suggested for this individual some types of ministry or types of leadership situations that they ought to be placed in order to stretch their ability to deal with people. Somebody that was very organized really struggled with people that weren't organized and kind of just wrote them off. Well, we all know in the church that's going to be a problem. And so I said, hey, I can help you with this. This is something that I've had to learn to do, and I can help you learn to do. I had somebody that came back with a serious kind of urgent recommendation. They weren't in my church, but I saw the report, and it was an urgent recommendation for marriage counseling. I called Dr. Huff, and I said, Dr. Huff, I think this is a serious deal, and I think I have the people that I think could do the counseling that are not in leadership over them. This is what I would suggest. Dr. Huff said, make it happen. So we have used them in some isolated instances, but I will say some of the really kind of intense discussions that we've had in our board of ministry and even up into ordination interviews and discussion could have been avoided if we had looked at these earlier and really done something about them. And so I think this is a big part of the mentoring process. It gives you a tool as mentors to be able to know some things in advance that you're going to need to be working on with our MITs. And so I'm willing to give you any kind of additional thoughts that I might have on that in more than 5 minutes, which I'm sure I've already taken. But I would love to share that with you. Ideally, I would love for the candidates themselves to hand you their one-page summary. I think that helps establish a relationship. And if they don't want to, that would actually tell us some things about the candidate as well, I think. But I would also be willing to get you a copy of that one page if you're having troubles with getting it from the candidate.
Well, in other words, you just touched on, I was going to comment that the candidate should know that the mentor is going to see this.
Yeah.
You touched on.
Yeah, and they sign a disclosure agreement. We, as the district, are the clients when we send them, so they know the district gets this report, but there is a list of people that are allowed to see the full report, and it limits it. Now, that one-page report is a different story because it's recommendations and it's not the confidential kind of HIPAA medical file. So that makes a difference. The one page is we have a little bit more freedom to share. But I really think using this will help us in this process of mentoring. It gives us a leg up in what we need to be dealing with.
When in the process are they supposed to do the MCW?
So the MCW, we have as a district voted to recommend it strongly after the first district license. And require it before ordination. And so I start contacting people as soon as they receive their first district license, usually right after district assembly, and sending them all the information that they need in order to plan for that, and then they would go in October. This year, district assembly's in July. I've actually already sent emails. There's a few that, because of extenuating circumstances, work, pregnancies, different things, have not been able to go the first year, and I really try to pursue them that they would go the second year. Sent an email out to about 12 different candidates, I think, after our April meetings. I haven't heard back from one of them yet, and the deadline just passed where I was supposed to have signed them up, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more urgent calling and things to get our folks signed up. So it is what it is. That's part of my role, and I'm okay with that. But anything you can do to help would be good. Another thing that I'll point out is there have been a few instances where spouses were not able to go and the candidate still went. That is highly discouraged. It's happened, it's been necessary, but really it limits their ability to see into the marriage relationship and the dynamics which we know are really integral to church ministry, the husband and wife relationship. And so made it a little more difficult to get the fullness of what could have been provided out of the experience. It's always interesting to watch on that first day. If you haven't, if you haven't been to one of these, I recommend you find a way to go and just almost be an observer to an MCW if you haven't been to one. Dr. Huff asked me to go one year as an observer before I coordinated it because I had so many folks that were going through it. And it was really enlightening for me to be able to understand and just watch the dynamics. MCW's at Point Loma on campus there every October. It was the end of September, beginning of October this year. It's that first weekend in October every year. This year, every few years, they have a Spanish language only one held in Bakersfield. May not be obvious why that is, but there is translation usually at the one at Point Loma, but Bakersfield is north of the checkpoints, and so there are some that really struggle to get to Point Loma. This year is the year they're having that one in November in Bakersfield, so if we have Spanish language folks that need to go, that'd be a good opportunity.
As a logistical guide, also, we're going to talk about a little bit about the licensing. I want you to be checking with one of the first things you can do with your MIT is ensure, hey, is your paperwork done up to this point? Do you have everything filled out properly and set up? Do you have your local license? I didn't realize, no one told me after I got my first local license, I thought, oh, cool, I got a local license. And I threw it in a drawer with a bunch of other paperwork. And then when I went to go fill out my district license, I was supposed to have that thing. I panicked desperately. If it wasn't for Barbara Hutchinson at the church who actually kept records of everything in backups, I would still be a local licensed pastor because I never would have found that thing. So, is your paperwork up to date? Do you have it all there? Is everything ready? Are you where you need to be now? Do they have clear communication with study secretary and the board of ministry secretary? Make sure, hey, are you clearly communicating with Bill Belgie? It's amazing. I'm blown away how many come in and they're like, well, I sent it to an email. Bill's like, I haven't received anything. Well, I've been sending to this email. Have you sent it to this one? I've never seen that email. Then you don't have clear communication. Make sure that they're communicating with them. Even tell them, hey, ask Bill to respond to you once and make sure this is okay. Or give him a call and say, hey, I've been sending this stuff. Are you receiving it properly? I do believe, and maybe I'm speaking out of line here, but I believe that Bill would rather receive a call from someone asking, did I send this properly, than for them to continuously send it in a manner that caused them to look for it all over the cyber limbo. Do they know how to fill out their applications in a timely manner? Hey, did you fill out your district license application and send it in to Ken Yoakum in a timely manner so he's not waiting till last minute? Well, I was going to, but this came up. Okay, well, let's get it taken care of. Let's make sure that this stuff is up. I'm trying not to use the word babysitter here, but what we're going to do is help them to mature into doing responsible things and taking this process serious. The idea of this, as Larry pointed out earlier, is it's designed by design to have a high failure rate. We want to separate the wheat from the chaff, because when we send people out to go be a pastor, when we ordain them as chaplains or as deacons, what we are doing is we are sending them out with this amazing ability to make this huge difference in this world. And if they are not properly prepared, then it would be like going to an emergency room with a doctor who did an online course once on how to do heart surgery. We wouldn't allow them to do that with us. So why in the world would we send somebody out haphazardly trained to go out and be in charge of the eternal souls of people? Do they realize the responsibility to this process? Help them to get this. And I honestly believe the best way for them to get them is help them to understand the real stakes at hand. To understand what is really happening here. Leonard Ravenhill shares this amazing story about a guy who's in England. He's on his way to the gallows. And on his way to the gallows, there's a priest in front of him, and he's reading this word very stoically about how he's going to be condemned to hell because of all this stuff. And he stops him and he looks at him and he says, if I were to believe that which you professed, and that place that I am certainly going to have to go was a real place, then I wouldn't speak about it so professionally. Nothing would stop me from crawling across England on hands and knees across glass to ensure that every person knew the reality of this. We need to share this passion with them so they'll be lit on fire and say, you know what? I need to be better. I need to be a better pastor. I want to be more organized than I am now. They may be so absolutely organized and meticulous and great, but they should never settle for it. We want them to have a burden to say, I need to be better at everything that I do. So part of our mentoring is to help them to understand the responsibility to this process. MIT days. We are all going to Massachusetts and we are going to learn calculus. Yes! I'm from Los Alamos. I love this. I love the term. Okay, MIT days, and again, I'm going to ask a lot of grace as this slowly comes together. But we're going to have minister in training days. And MIT, we've established, is a minister in training. It's not the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And MIT trainings are supplemental courses that are offered on this district to teach practical application, ordination, comprehension, and field-based training. Each one of you have skills and experiences that they're not going to teach at any seminary. It's not going to happen. Larry had shared a story about going back and talking to an old prof. How well did we train you? You did great to train me for a church of 5,000, but where did you go to? A church of 25. And, we need to teach these applications the real things. And so we're going to offer courses on the district that we are going to have you, as well as other elders on the district, teach and offer these courses. They teach practical application. I have some sheets that I meant to pass out, but you may or may not have them. On there, some suggested MIT courses that we want to teach, but other ones that are not on there may be how to deal with the parent of a suicide child. Pastor Ken, in his, he's only been an ordained elder as long as me, and he's already had to deal with more suicide funerals than I think anybody should ever have to do in their lifetime. And as sad as that is, he has a gift and ability to teach new people to come up and say, you know what, this works. Or this, nothing works great, but here's some things that you can do. Or how do we turn our board meetings and get control of them in a small church? How do we do a budget? They want us to do a budget. How do I do a budget when we're barely making ends meet? I showed up at our church and they called our budget the beans and rice budget. I'm like, well, I love that you guys watching Dave Ramsey, but we're in a world of trouble here. How do we do these things? How do we be co-pastors at a church? We have people in this district who understand that very real dynamic. What is it to be a female clergy in the Nazarene church? It's easy for a lot of us to say, oh yeah, we ordain women and we're all about women empowerment, but we're really not. And we're not doing a very good job about it. So how do we help to encourage that? How do we teach them to be more involving of teaching our churches to be prepared for it? The church I was at had a female pastor come into it, and the body that was there was prepared for a female pastor, or so they thought, until they got one. And then they left. They knew it was there. How are we doing these things? So these are practical things that we can train and prepare our next pastors to go in to be able to hit the ground running, ready to have applicable skills. MIT training days are going to be held on a regular basis soon. At least twice a year is what we're looking for, or otherwise as best fits the district schedule. We're trying to do them maybe at a family camp, have them work around other events that we already have. Attendance at these meetings, at these training days, is required. Now please let your MITs know this. This is required. This is not optional. They are required to attend these until they're ordained or they've completed all of the courses that are available on here. And they're not going to get through all of the courses. The Secretary of the Board of Ministerial Studies is going to maintain a record of completed courses. And this is how it was written on the policy, but to be fair, I think I'm going to have to sit down with Bill and see what really works, because Bill's plate is already overflowing, so I guess we could slop some more stuff on there at this point. A failure to complete, so there's a minimum. I get you're not going to, we live in New Mexico. Everything is 400 miles away. It's not going to be possible to make every one of these MIT training days. So we're going to have them a minimum of 4 hours of MIT training, and if they don't have that, it can result in the removal from their candidacy for ministerial licensing. We are going to try to make this as accessible as possible. I've spoken with Ken about maybe doing some up in San Juan County so that they have some of those options. I'm doing some down in Doña Ana County, doing some in Lee County and Lincoln County, just a few here and there, what we can to kind of help to make sure that this is being done. But as this gets going and gets formed, this is going to be more, again, systematic as well. I hate to do the shotgun approach or something when I'm trying to laser in, but we don't have a lot of choice on our district. We're huge.
Carl, is that 4 hours a year?
4 hours a year, yes, thank you. 4 hours of MIT training a year. And so some of these courses are longer. We're putting DCPI in these. DCPI, if you do just the regular DCPI course, you've got, 24 hours you've done in this? I mean, you've knocked it out by doing DCPI. In fact, we're talking about our desires to make DCPI one of those that it's required to do. So let's get that one knocked out. Every pastor should have some basic information on how to plant a church. Every single church that we attend should be, I absolutely believe, should be be born with the idea of conceiving a child. We're always in the church planting business. That's what we do by design of our theology and our doctrine. While these courses are required for MITs, other pastors on the district are also welcome to attend. Hey, you know what? There's a lot of these things that I'm going to be really interested in hearing about. I would love to hear stories about what has worked for you. Arnie's crazy life as an evangelist, Robert Claiborne even coming out of a Lutheran group, how he sees the dynamics of two churches, what it's like to be in Durham in a lot of aspects. Pete, what it is like to have 16,000 church plants under your belt in a small metropolitan area. These things are really beneficial to all of us. And we're hoping to make CEUs available for attendance because perks are perks, right? You guys are going to have to fill out a contact form. I have contact forms. I'll email you copies of them. And it's basically just going to be a small form. I want your name. I want the date of the contact. And some information on it. These need to be filled out for each meeting that you have with your MIT. You will fill one out and your MIT will fill one out. And they can mail them to me if they like. I prefer they scanned it in a PDF format and sent it to me, but they are to be sent to me at least quarterly. And if I don't have these contact forms, the meeting never happened. And if the meeting never happened, it never met the requirements of the New Mexico district policy. Do we get that? And if it didn't meet the requirements, what does that mean for the MIT? There's a very real possibility of them being removed from this. So preferably emailed. I'm all about the email. Send it in a PDF format. It's not that hard. If you have a scanner, it will do PDF. If you have a phone, there's an app that turns everything into PDF. They got an app for everything. Both the mentor and the mentee are to fill out their own forms. And part of this is going to be what was discussed. I don't want details. I certainly don't want things that are private, things that are meant to be confidential. Keep the details of the conversation confidential. This is a really important aspect of this that I hadn't considered until I was doing some research and some prayer about it. Your MIT, your mentee, the person you have a relationship needs to understand from the beginning, and you need to understand that this relationship is a very intimate one. They need to feel open with you to share whatever it is that they need to share with you. And if we don't have a written policy about this, then there's always that threat to the integrity of this relationship. Keep those things confidential. This is the same as you would with any other person. In your report, we just want to talk, we talked about educational stuff. That's what we want. If there are other aspects that need to be brought up from your point of view, then they need to come before the board of ministry, and they need to be done through the proper channels. Please don't say, hey, this red flag came up with so-and-so. I'm going to call Pastor Rick because I know he's on the board of ministry. Don't do that. We have certain channels that I've spoken with Dr. Huff about how we want to try to do this on this district and in this policy. So, issues that arise concerning educational or logistical problems. For instance, this person's they're really struggling with their education. They might need to try a different track. Logistically, they can't do this. Or other issues that are not of necessarily high, need to be very confidential, things you can share. They're struggling a little bit with relationships with others, stuff that you would see maybe on that sheet that the MCWs have sent. Those things come to the director of mentoring. They're to come to me. Part of my task, we read earlier, is to send out this information to the proper channels. I am to be the liaison. So if they need to go, you got something that needs to go to the Board of Studies because they have a problem with education, please send it through me so that I can send it to the proper channels there. If it needs to go to the interview board because they need to ask certain questions, please try to send them through me so that we can send them through those proper channels and we're all on the same page and they can be taken care of accordingly. Any ethical or moral character issues are to be taken only to the DS. So if something comes up, hey, this person, it came up, they have a serious issue with pornography, or they said it was just a one-time thing, but they had an account of infidelity in their marriage. You need to bring these to the district superintendent. They need to go to Dr. Hoff so that he can accordingly take care of that. So these issues need to go there as we would with any other things, but we need to follow these chain of, I hate to say command, but there's proper procedures that we're doing so that everything's taken care of properly, because the integrity of this relationship is imperative. If our MITs, if our pastors coming up don't trust their mentors, if they think like I would have thought, because I'm going to come into this game myself, I'm going to think you're a probation officer put over me to make sure that I'm doing things right. Your biggest tackle, your biggest hurdle is going to get past that, so that they realize that you are there, you're in their corner, you are there to encourage them and to build them up and to do all these things for them. They need to know that you're going to go to bat for them. And they need to know that you're willing to take hits for them and do whatever it takes to encourage them and move them through this. So part of that requires protecting the integrity of this relationship. At our contact meetings, talking points for the mentoring meetings are to be developed around 4 major elements of educational preparation. Content, what are you learning? Right? What are you learning? How is this going for you? Context, tell me about the ministry you're doing. How are you putting your theology into application? Character. What are you doing to maintain personal and spiritual integrity? How are you protecting yourself? How are you protecting your marriage? How are you protecting your family? These are things that you need to be speaking about, because you all know from experience how important this is. Competency. What impact is your ministry having on others? Do you understand why when you do this, it makes a difference to others? Do you understand the importance of the theology? Do you understand the importance of the means of grace, of the things that we do? Do you understand how they impact others around you? All right, and finally we're going to do some spiritual gifts, personality type, and I'm going to let Larry take this over here, and only stole a little bit of time, so it's not bad at all.
So we already talked about the MCW and how that's going to help us as mentors to have a picture of the person that we are working with and some of the items or issues that should be dealt with. We also have another assessment, and this assessment will be one that you administer probably in your first face-to-face meeting with your minister in training. And so I'm going to have you do this so that you can say, I've done this myself. And also so that you can see how it works. It's a very simple assessment that will help you, I think, to have some general ideas of who this person is, what they're about, because who this person is, where their passions are, where their giftedness is, and what their personality is, affects the way they do ministry. And if you can help them to do ministry within their giftedness, then you can help them to do fruitful ministry. Pete's often talked about this, how he's worked with people in his staff that just weren't gifted in a particular area, and they were beating their brains out trying to be good at that, and that just wasn't where they were gifted. So let's take a moment and just let's work our way through this. So the first thing that you want to do is, in that box under passions, is write down things that you enjoy. And they don't have to be spiritual things, just stuff that you enjoy. If you like fishing, write that in there. If you like macrame, write that in there. If you like reading books, write that in there. If you like working on the computer, write those things. Whatever things that you just are passionate about, you really enjoy. It may be studying the Word of God, or it may be teaching or learning or something to that effect. But really, if you're a mechanic, put that in there. Whatever things that you just really enjoy doing, write that in there. While you're doing that, because I know you're capable of doing more than one thing, you've heard Raul say, mentoring has teeth in it. So that for the minister in training, being involved with a mentor is not optional. We have made the decision on the district that failure to meet your mentoring requirement is cause for non-renewal of your district license. The ministers in training, the MITs, need to understand that this is not optional, that attending the workshop training is not optional, we'll look at that and say, you're not prepared to continue to minister. Why? Because we believe that everyone preparing for ministry needs a coach. And it gets really to the point of, what should ordination guarantee to the local church? So when we as a board of ministry recommend somebody for ordination, and they get hands laid upon them, and the general superintendent says, take thou authority, there should be something we're guaranteeing to the local churches on our district. That this person is fully capable and certified as fully capable of serving any church on the district. And we recognize that there have been people that we've unleashed on the district, on local churches, who should not have been certified for ministry. And so we recognize that's our fault. That's not the candidate's fault. If they don't know any better, whose fault is that? It's the teacher's fault, not the learner's fault. And so we as teachers are going to take responsibility for preparing people at the highest possible level that we can do on the district, so that when we lay hands on them or ordain them, we are guaranteeing to the local church, here's somebody who's qualified to serve your church. Now in that second box, if you haven't done it, list any talents that you have. Again, be creative. If you like to speak or act, or if you play an instrument, or if you're a mechanic, or if you work in clay, whatever, if there's a craft that you do, any skill that you have, just list that in there. If you play the piano, list that in there. The next piece is a little personality survey. This is really based on the 4 personality types: choleric, sanguine, melancholy, and phlegmatic. And it's really general. If you've done the Florence Littauer test, you know there are 40 questions. This one only has 24, but it should give us a general idea of your personality. And so what I want you to do is to rate each of the following questions from 0, meaning not at all, that never applies to me, to 4, that always applies to me. And then you'll see in the score sheet on the back of that, there's a place to put that number. So number 1 corresponds to the box for number 1 on the back, etc. So go through each of those questions and rate them 0 to 4. So I'll say, in terms of this profile, it's one that I've put together, but it's all adapted from stuff that's out there. I'm not smart particularly, so I find good stuff and I use it. And this personality type is adapted from the Littauer version. Now, on the last 4 questions, if you've gotten there, you'll notice that you're supposed to rank those from lowest to highest, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So read all 4 questions and then rank. This one is the lowest. It applies to me least often. And this one is the highest. It applies to me all the time. So those last 4 questions, there's a different ranking process for them. So in terms of evaluating, if you have a single number that stands out all by itself, so you have a 20 and then maybe a 2, a 4, and a 6 or something like that, then you would evaluate yourself as the A, the B, the C, the D by itself. Most people, however, are some kind of combination. So you might have a 20 and an 18 and then a 4 and a 2 or something like that. In that case, where you have 2 that are close and 2 that are more distant, and it doesn't really matter what the span is of distance, you take the 2 together, and then you're an AB or a BC or a CD or a DA, and you're some sort of combination. So let's just ask. Rick, are you totaled up?
Yeah.
What did you end up?
I ended up B.
Okay, so
My next one's D.
so are they close together? So you're a BD, which I'm going to say is not a natural combination.
Say I don't even have any there.
Yeah. So and we'll talk about why that is. So. But probably, probably what that means is you're more of a BC, and knowing you, that's what I would suggest, is that you're more of a BC. But a lot of pastors end up with that D personality because we care about people. We're caring people, and so that'll show up a lot simply because of our call. Okay, so Susan, what'd you end up with?
I'm a B.
You're a B. Yes, I would agree. Yeah. Yeah. Now, having said that, I have another version of this test that I didn't find real quickly when I printed this off that has the female correspondence to the male personality types, and that's the one we'll get posted and make available to everybody, so that there's a way of looking at this from a male type and a female type from Scripture, and I've done that from Scripture. So you're a Paul, and we'll leave it at that. What'd you end up with, Raul? You're a Paul, of course. Yeah, Pete. You're an Isaiah, so you are a BC. So that's, and I'm going to say that's a lot like Rick. And what about you, Bill?
DA, Barnabas.
Okay, yeah, and knowing you as I do, I would not disagree with that at all. I'm a BC myself, so I'm a Thomas, or I guess I'm more of a Isaiah personality. Ken, what did you end up with?
Peter and Barnabas.
Okay, so you are an AD. So okay, so you're very people focused. And very tuned in to how people are feeling in a particular situation, and it makes you a people pleaser. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Aaron, what'd you end up with?
John and then Barnabas.
Okay. So a John, so a strong, another people person, another encourager, really tuned into people. Arnie, what'd you end up with?
Well, B and D are two highs, they're tied.
Okay, so your B and D are high. So here's a place where you could look at, one of the reasons I have the descriptors is sometimes to break the tie, read the two descriptors, and you say, okay, well, I'm more of that than that. And but again, this idea that quite often we who are in ministry test out with that encourager personality that, it may be that we just need to be more discreet. This is a pretty summarized test. So, Rob, what'd you end up with?
The C, D, and B is very kind of hard to do.
Okay, so a CD, so that's kind of the Jeremiah, and that wouldn't surprise me at all about you. Very detail-oriented, very tuned into people, but the difference between the A and the D, the A person likes a crowd. The D person likes the individual. And so, and that's, Rob is very tuned into people, but really would rather have the small, intimate conversation than the party. And so that's one of the ways that you kind of distinguish those two. Jacob, I don't want to leave you out. What'd you end up?
It was John.
You're John? Okay, that doesn't surprise me at all. So you're a solid D, so that's really tuned into people, really affected by people, really for people, and really enjoy individual personal relationships. Now, you guys are all pretty well able immediately to kind of do the processing here. If you're a people person, you're going to do ministry differently than if you're a systems person. You know, I'm kind of systems and task oriented. And so, you know, I do ministry administratively. I like to teach. I like to lead. I like to be out front. The people persons, they do ministry better by having coffee with folks, you know, and are the kind of people that want to go deep in small relationships. And so, you know, Jacob should never try to do ministry like I do it. It'll frustrate the snot out of him. Similarly, I should never try to do ministry like Jacob does it. It'll drive me crazy. It's too slow. It's to plodding. You know, I wake up every day looking for the next mountain to climb, right, Pete? You're like that. And other people wake up every day thinking about, who do I get to spend time with today? You know, and how am I going to build people into my life? We're both called, but we're called in different ways to different kinds of ministry. So go ahead and read the descriptors that I'd put there, and I won't take time to unfold all of these. But read the descriptor, and some of you have already said it pretty well nailed you. So this is just a talking point for you in working with your minister in training. It will help you to understand their personality type, their way of approaching the world, and how you can help them to do ministry within the context of their personality type. And help them to understand and find models of people who do ministry that way. So, Susan, you said you're Paul. So you're an upfront person. You're an initiator. You're a person who wants to accomplish something every day. You know, you're a big idea, big dreamer person. The problem with Paul's is, and you have to teach Paul's, that you have to be really careful not to run over people in the process. And if you have Paul in your personality, you have to learn that the world is occupied chiefly by other people. Because we who are Paul's tend to look at people as part of the process. Either you're helping me accomplish what I want to accomplish, or you're in my way. And if you're in my way, I'll do it myself. And if you can be helpful, great, let's get it done. But we lose patience with people very quickly. We tend to be abrupt and snipey with people. And so if you have somebody, if you're working with somebody with a Paul personality, you have to help them to tune into people and to recognize this is a people business we're in. Now, if you have somebody who's a John or Barnabas, they're all tuned into people. You know, they're really good at relationships. But those people like that, they're not good at the kinds of things that Raul talked about. Sending the paperwork in. And contacting Bill, and they don't see the point of keeping all those records, and keeping all those files and things like that. That just overwhelms them. That record keeping aspect of ministry, and the creating calendars and creating schedules and follow up with people and stuff like that. That just really aggravates people who are in that kind of personality. So you have to kind of help them to understand, find ways to accomplish the technical record-keeping side of ministry in ways that are useful to them. So I won't take time to go through all of that, but I would encourage that you, with your minister in training, take time to really talk through all of that stuff with some detail. And you all have really good enough ministry instincts that you'll understand how a person's personality affects the way they do ministry and affects the way they are fruitful in ministry. So I want to put all three pieces together here in a minute. But before we do that, let's go ahead and do a spiritual gifts test. So I call this a spiritual giftedness analysis because I find that you really have to talk about passions, talents, personality, and spiritual gifts to get a real picture of how somebody is gifted for ministry. So one of the things that helped me is when I take my spiritual gift test, what always is high for me is the gift of teaching and knowledge. It took me a long time to figure out, oh, wait a minute, I'll be most fruitful if I do ministry through class, through teaching people. You know, if I do ministry in that way, that's the way that I'm gifted for ministry. And so once I kind of figure out that, then I figure out where I'm most comfortable, where I'm happiest, and where I'm most fruitful. And so again, you have a scoring sheet on page 10, and you have a bunch of questions to ask here. And what I've done here is I've taken 2 or 3 different what I want to say, rack spiritual gift tests, and have kind of distilled them through my thinking and have tried to create my own questions. Now, I've done this test with people who are really self-critical, and their highs are really low. That's often true with very new Christians also. They just don't have a lot of ministry experience. And so they don't even know, they've never been involved in some of these situations, so they don't know how they would respond. So in those cases, sometimes their highs are 4, 5, or 6. That's okay. Doesn't matter how high the high is. And I've done this test with people who are like you all, who have engaged in a lot of ministry through their lives, and their low might be 12 or 13. And there's a very narrow range between what's high and what's low. And that's okay. What we're looking for is the trending. Okay, so you want to look at your highest numbers, whatever those highest numbers are. So look at your highest number and then look for a gap of not more than 1 or 2 between that and the others that are high. Usually you will end up with 1, 2, or 3 that are high together. And put a circle around those. Then most commonly there is a gap of 1 or 2, and then there's another group that clusters together as they belong together, but they're not in your highest group. And I always recommend that you put a square around those. And then when you look on the back, circle the ones that belong in your high cluster and put a square around the ones that are in your next highest cluster. Your primary gift cluster is the gifts that you have, the primary gifts that you have for ministry, the things that you will most often be effective and fruitful and joyful in serving in that way. So, Raul, I think I saw you finished pretty early. So what do you have in your primary gift cluster? Those would be the ones that are circled.
The first one is knowledge, then teaching, then exhortation.
Okay. So knowledge, teaching, and exhortation. So you're a proclaimer. And you are probably happiest when you're in the pulpit. And second happiest when you're preparing to be in the pulpit. And so, you know, those are gifts that you might see in an evangelist or a preacher. But obviously, that's a place where you're going to be very effective in your ministry that you need to continually hone and work with. And remind me, your personality type was Paul. So those things go together. You like to be out in front of people. You like to be pointing at the hill and saying, "There's the hill. Let's go get it." Those kinds of things. So that's kind of natural leadership gifts. What's your secondary gift cluster?
I had a tie for fourth place, for helping in prophecy, and then a tie for fifth, for pastor leadership and wisdom.
Okay. So you have helping and prophecy in there. Interestingly enough, still proclaimer gifts. And so you see the helping as not so much helping in sense of a service, but helping in sense of come up here and let me help you see this. So it is helping that serves the proclamation, a prophecy that serves the proclamation. Now, of course, with all of that gift cluster and that personality, you can see that for Raul, where he's going to struggle is with plotters, people who don't get it, people who don't embrace it, people who don't come along very quickly, and people who are happy with the way things are. Those people are going to drive him crazy. Guess what the church is made up of? Yeah, so if you're Raul's mentor and you know this information, you know where to kind of put your thumb each week. How are you doing in your interpersonal relationships? How have you been building relationships with people this week? Who have you spent time this week that frustrates you naturally? Sure.
This
Yeah.
is a surprise.
No, not at all. But if I was beginning a mentoring relationship with him with this information, it's really going to shape the way that I work with him. It's really going to help me. So now I can ask the question, Raul, talk to me about things you're passionate about.
Preaching to people.
Okay. What are your talents?
I think teaching people.
Teaching people, preaching to people? Okay. So here's what you would immediately hear with Raul. Raul likes to work alone. And so as a pastor, the way you would coach him, as a mentor, the way you would coach him is, Raul, you have to build people into your life. You have to slow down and let people catch up. You have to value the contribution of others who don't get it as fast as you do. And we've all talked about that, yes. But see immediately, you know, if I didn't know Raul from Moses, I would understand some things immediately that are going to be real challenges for the way that he does ministry. Because he has all of this kind of aggressive leadership stuff built into his cluster. That's great, but he's not an evangelist. You know, if he were an evangelist, okay, you can go in and blow over people and go on. Leave it for the pastors to clean up. But yeah, amen. Amen. But God's called him to parish ministry. And parish ministry is the slow, difficult work of faith formation. And that drives him crazy. And so you kind of have to, so one of the things that you would coach Raul is, and who are you building into your ministry staff who has permission to tell you to slow down? That you're out so far ahead of us, we don't know where you are anymore. And so you try to get him to live into that helper, to say, when you see that you're helping somebody, that's going to give you great joy. And so help that to kind of be expressed. That's the whole joy of that. Susan, what's in your primary cluster?
Wisdom, discernment, and evangelism.
Okay, so you're a person that's, hey, you about ready for us? Maybe. You're a person that's really good. Now, remind me, you're Paul, right? So you're going to be a person that's really good at speaking into people's lives. But what's going to be challenging about that is waiting for the moment. Right? So somebody who's a Paul, who's aggressive, and has all this wisdom and discernment, they just want to take Rick aside and say, I need to tell you some things, you know, and it may not be Rick's moment at all. And so you're going to wonder why it always blows up in your face. I know I was telling them what the Lord had laid on my heart, but it just kind of exploded on me. Well, let's talk about timing. And how you know when somebody's ready to hear from you, and how you build a relationship so that people will trust you enough that you can speak into their life that way. What's your secondary gift cluster?
Leadership, knowledge, and miracles.
Okay, so same deal. These are aggressive gifts, leadership gifts that tend to make you impatient with slow and stupid people, right? So, you know, if people don't get it immediately, or if they don't see it the way you do, or what seems so clear to you, just so obvious to you, and you share it with somebody else and they go, what? You go, what about this can you not see? I'm sure poor Hector has heard that often.
He's nice. He balances.
And that's the nice thing about having a spouse and giving your spouse permission to say, keep me from getting carried away here. And so when you observe something, when you see something is going on, especially since your husband is also a minister, and when you see something that's coming down the road that's going to hurt him, I know that you have really good ability to say, you got to watch that. So you ought to be a person who journals, who gets this stuff down on paper, and even if you don't act on it immediately, you start tracking things and sorting things so that you'll be a person who sees where things are going before anybody else gets there. And that's a really effective way. If you can begin to discern through this kind of wisdom and knowledge and faith and miracles, you'll discern how the wave of the Lord is moving. And if you can help get your people out in front of that because you've discerned it, then you can help them to ride in on the wave that, So what you're trying to do as a pastor is you're trying to be here. You're trying to be listening prophetically, tuned into what the Lord is doing, seeing what He's doing, observing it, recording it, seeing where the wave is going, and then you're going to try to steer your people into that wake. So you're really going to be kind of prophetically led, which is a wonderful way to be. So you want a presence-based ministry. So you want to be prophetically led, not programmatically led. You don't want to be asking, what is Kansas City asking of me? You want to be asking, what is the Lord doing and how are we joining Him in that? And there's just great freedom in riding that wave once you kind of see it. So you have to train yourself to look for it because you know you have the ability to see it. Does that make sense? So, can I pick on you, Rick? I won't pick on everybody, but knowledge and exhortation. So there's proclamation gifts. But you have this kind of Barnabas personality, right? No, you were a John. Okay. So more tuned into people. And so you're more of a person that's going to come alongside a person. There's a great ability to declare to a congregation, but you're a person that's going to be really good at coming alongside somebody, putting your arm around them and saying, let's walk this out together. I really see God doing this in your life. How can I encourage you along that way? Does that make sense? And so what's your secondary gift cluster?
Wisdom, faith, prophecy, and teaching.
So kind of all that same. Working in intimate relationships to help people to move into what God's calling them to do. More relational, more proclamational. If you see how that. So your personality, almost the same gift clusters, but a different personality, which means that you live it out differently. So that's why I think you have to have your gift cluster conversation in the context of your personality. Since you were interested in planting a church, because you have apostolic gifts. This here's the hill, let's go take it kind of gifts. And Rick has, although pastor hasn't come up in his cluster, he has very pastoral kinds of gifts. Get involved in the lives of people, teach them, train them, help them to go deeper, discipling, all those kinds of, you're more of a discipler. And in that sense, that makes sense? So, anybody else want to be picked on? Aaron, I haven't picked on you. You're in the back row. Got to pick on the back row guy.
Yeah, no, my number one was mercy.
Excellent.
And I have 3 or 4 that are pretty much the same.
Okay.
Apostle, pastor, giving, teaching. And it's interesting. I want to kind of pick your brain on this, but I feel like I have pastoral skills, maybe that gift, but it's also the thing that kind of terrifies me.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that?
So there you go. So Yeah.
I
So,
feel like I'm good relationally.
exactly.
But it's also, I mean, I despise like going and visiting people in the hospital. I don't despise it.
Yeah.
Like, that really, I have to like really pump myself up.
I would think about, for instance, that's a wonderful way to think about how does somebody with a gift of mercy do hospital calling versus a guy with exhortation. So, Raul's going to come in the hospital with a word, and a prayer, and this kind of that. Let me tell you what God's thinking. You're going to do pastoral calling by saying, you're going to come at noon and help people eat.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of freaks me out is because I wouldn't know what to tell them or
Yeah.
like, here's what you need to hear.
Right.
I would feel more comfortable being able to just sit with someone
Exactly.
for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it freaks me out because I feel like I would need to say something. And that's what kind of really
I was
terrifies
a
me.
hospice chaplain for a little while, and they call that ministry of presence.
Yeah. And there's a whole theology of presence that goes with that.
Just being there.
Yeah.
We'd sit and we'd play music on our phones, play hymns for people that couldn't even speak. And sometimes that's more meaningful than anything that we
Right.
could say.
In all seriousness, I can see Aaron walking in your room with his guitar and saying, I want to play.
Yeah. Let's just.
We had a family in our church that lost their daughter in her 30s in a surgery, and just freak thing that happened. And when I was young in ministry, I didn't know what to do, but I knew we had to go. So we went over, we walked in, had no idea what to say, and just gave them a big old hug in their
Right.
house and sat with them.
Right.
And they talked some, but we didn't say much. Later on, they told us that we did the right thing, and that it was more meaningful than anything anybody else had done, because everybody else had these trite phrases that they wanted to say.
Right. Right.
Tried to be encouraging, but it wasn't. It was not what they wanted to hear at that time. And that hug meant everything.
Yeah.
to them, so.
See, that's where a person like me gets himself in trouble, because in my personality, I'm a fixer, and I want to go in every situation and solve it and fix it somehow. And I had to learn sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing, is just be there, which is natural for you. So I had my associate on staff is a person who's really good at just going and sitting with people for hours. I have no patience for that. I'm terrible at that. When I walk, and I know this about me, and I have to coach myself. When I walk in a room, I'm looking for the exit plan. I'm thinking, my clock is running, and I'm feeling really awkward around people anyway, because that's my personality. And so I'm always kind of looking for, how long do I have to be here to feel like I've done my duty, and then, I can get on down to the next task. But
Don't ever be a hospice chaplain.
yeah, that's right. No, I'm telling you, it's tough on me. And I really have to kind of talk myself into slowing down and being fully present with people. I know I'm terrible. If I'm talking to Raul, I'm looking to see who else is waiting in line. It's bad about me. Here you have this wonderful ability to be in the moment with the person, fully immersed in that moment. And what?
My struggle is that I feel like I have that natural gift. Like that's my natural gift. But at the same time, like I said, it also terrifies me. And I feel like I'm at the point where I'm wrestling with how that actually looks. Because right now, I feel like I'm not living into that gifting.
Sure.
And therefore, I've kind of pushed it aside. I've talked to Raul about it. I feel like pastor is the last thing as far as like the apostle, evangelist.
Right.
In my mind, I think that, but it maybe more in my heart, I feel like that's actually what maybe I am.
And this is why I think this is also an important aspect of the mentoring. We have we have kind of this unspoken expectation that your goal in ordination is to become a lead pastor. But that's it. If you're not aiming for that, you're somehow not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But the spiritual gifts are going to allow us, as pastors, we'll discuss more a little bit, is to help them say, you know what? I know you got to do this thinking that's what you do, but you're not called to a lead pastor. Maybe you're called to be a compassionate ministries director. Maybe you're called to this area, and help them to find that place, because it's not only not true of our doctrine, but it's also not biblical to say you're called to lead pastor or you're called to nothing.
Well, and that's actually one of the ways we talked about this in Estes Park. The shape of ministry is changing. What we call congregational leadership is taking all sorts of different faces, especially with millennials and whatever comes behind them. Gen Y, Z, Zero, I don't know what they all are, digitals. Really, people are the traditional, I'm the pastor of a local church ministry is changing to things that you guys do, Pete, where you're the leader of a compassionate ministry, and that leads you into a pastoral relationship with people. Ruth Hasenauer is doing that in Bernalillo. It's really good. Am I off the picture? So for a guy like Aaron, one of the reasons why I put biblical names with these personalities is to show that God called people with Aaron's personality and made them effective in ministry. And so you know that none of us has the same personality. And so you say, well, let's see, Aaron, you were a Barnabas, right?
John.
You're John. With Barnabas helper. So here's a place where you can kind of lead somebody.
It's challenging for me because I've transitioned from a staff pastor to the lead pastor, and that's been a challenge.
So you ask the question, you know,
more of a come alongside someone else
and help somebody else to be the leader and to be great. Maybe there's ways you do that as a pastor in a congregation. So you think in terms of who are the leaders in my congregation and how do I help them to excel? How do I help them to achieve their dreams? And so there are ways you think about John and what is John? He just hangs out with Jesus, lays on his chest, listens to Jesus, and responds to that. So guess what? You're kind of pre-built to do that.
Or how do I hire as a senior pastor?
Right.
As a senior pastor.
Yeah. Or how? Yeah. And so you may be the lead pastor, not the preaching pastor in the church. And that may be okay, and you may build up people that do that. And so it helps you to let go of some of the things that, while they are in your job description, may not be your primary role. So how do you equip people? So I know, for instance, I'm not really good relationally. I hire people who are. And then in so doing, I have to not be jealous of the fact that they have better relationships with some people than I do. Because that's why I brought them in. So if you're looking for, no. Arnie. And I think, Aaron, your preaching is going to be different than mine. You're going to be the let us go kind of preacher, the encourager, the more of the
definitely more of a
conversational preacher. And and Raul's going to be the thus saith the Lord kind of preacher. And so you, if you try to preach like me or Raul, it's just going to get ugly real fast. But if you can think in terms of preaching like, say, John, you immerse yourself in his letters and his gospel, and you say, how did John approach sharing Christ with a group of people? And now suddenly you're talking to your sons and your fathers, and it's a whole different kind of conversation. So you look for different biblical models. So you guys are all really adept at this kind of stuff, so I don't need to belabor it. But as you can see, just in the examples that we've talked, when you get a sense of, well, first of all, yourself, I think this is useful. If you'll just process this for yourself, it might kind of get you kind of off the guilt train. For instance, what's that?
For a lifetime past.
Yeah, exactly. I look at Fred Huff, and he is just so comfortable building relationships with people. He can talk to anybody. I'm just always awkward around people, unless I'm in front. And so I can learn from him, but I can't be him. I can't do ministry like he would. And so then you choose models that seem to do ministry in the way that you're gifted to do ministry, and they help you to get better within your giftedness, within the abilities that you have. And then as you mentor, Raul, now I know you already know this about Aaron. One of the things you can do is to say, quit trying to do that. It's never going to work for you. This is what works for you. Help, and clearly this is, you're at the helm of this church, so help the church be better at, the call to mercy in their community, and help them to think in those terms better. That's your prophetic role at this time. So you can help somebody if you have this information plus the stuff from the NCW. You can really help them to do ministry in ways that they will be joyful in the way they do it, and they'll be fruitful in the results. And I think the reason we drop out of ministry is because we're trying to do ministry in ways that we're not gifted to do it. We're trying to follow our heroes, which usually have a different personality from us. And if we can help people on the front end to do ministry within their gifting, then we're going to help them to be joyful and fruitful, and they're going to last. They're going to do better over the long haul. Yeah. You should be, as the mentor, you should be giving this to them in your first meeting. Or if it's online, you should be coaching them through. You should have them go online and complete it, and then sit down with them in their first meeting.
So did you write this whole thing?
Yeah, I adapted it all. Yes. Yeah, yes-ish. Yeah, as an extension of that. Actually, part of my catechism. There was a point I wanted to publish my catechism, and I didn't want anything in there that was somebody else's. So I rewrote everything myself so that I could publish it under my name. So, and it's the way I think. So I think holistically about this whole person. Now, for instance, we didn't even talk about the gifts and talents, but say if you have a talent for fishing, and you are, and you have these gifts of mercy, a lot of times you'll be like my buddy who was a pastor in Alaska, and he had gifts of mercy. He wasn't a really great exhorter, but he has really great gifts of mercy. They were on the moose patrol. What that meant is every time somebody killed a moose by driving through it or something like that, they would get a call, and they would go out and they would get the moose and they would dress it out, and then they would distribute the meat to the poor in the community. And so there's a gift of mercy in a pastoral sense. That's how he created pastoral connections with people, was by giving them free moose meat, by going out and when it was 40 below and collecting dead mooses. Yeah, so if your gift is auto mechanics, your talent was auto mechanics, and you have these, maybe you do it through fixing people's brakes or something like that. But that's how you create pastoral relationships with people, is by applying your talents in there.
I want to talk a little more about just being the mentor, the other aspect of this, and we're going to go through this really, really fast. I really like this because this, I think, kind of paints a picture. Your advice is very important to me, so I wrote down exactly what I want you to say. We need to learn our relationship with them and where we're at and why it is that we're mentoring, what that's supposed to look like. And there are different types of mentors. These first, all of these different mentors, with the exception of this first one, really, are going to be part of what you're going to do as part of your task. They're long-term mentors. Part of them is the discipler. A discipler is a relational process in which more experienced follower of Christ shares a newer believer a commitment, understanding, basic skills necessary to know and obey Jesus Christ as Lord. By the time you get an MIT, they should have been discipled to some degree. Certainly, if they've reached this far into their learning, to help guide the disciple into a more Christ-centered life is the purpose of this mentoring relationship. The disciple also teaches spiritual habits.
Let me just say again, if we think more in terms of formation than preparation,
Yeah.
that helps us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In formation, also, we're looking for teaching them how to prayer, devotional, intercessory, scriptural study, obedience, stewardship, journaling, self-awareness, sacrificial living, and ministry. These are all just parts of what it means to disciple somebody. More along the lines of what we're going to be doing is a spiritual guide, which is almost the next level after discipling. The spiritual guide mentors are specialists at assessing spirituality, which is part of why these spiritual tests are important. It differs from disciple or mentors who seek to enable others in the basics of following Christ. So this is the next level. We're taking this to a more practical and applicable level in your walk. While there's no overlap with the discipler, the spiritual guide is concerned more with critical junctures in the disciple's life. This is part of what you're going to be doing. They're at critical junctures at all points during this process, so helping them to make the right decision. Which way am I looking to my ministry? What am I looking to do next? Where do I want to be studying more? Most people need personal guidance on spiritual issues, often throughout their lifetime, but not on a fixed time schedule. The functions spiritual guides perform help emphasize this need. They're going to help believers assess their own development. This is a very important part of what you're going to do. Point out areas of strength and weaknesses in spirituality. Help believers identify needs, take initiative for change and growth. Help them to say, this is what I need to do. How am I going to take the next step towards this? Provide perspectives on how to develop growth and depth, as well as provide accountability for spiritual maturity. You're going to help them to walk through this process and grow more into Christ-likeness. A mentoring relationship with the spiritual guide is normally initiated by the mentoree, since he or she is the one who's aware of the need. But once it's expressed and expectations from both sides exchanged and clarified, the mentor must assume responsibility for the relationship and work towards meeting the expectations. You are going to help be their spiritual guide. The believer should have a spiritual guide throughout their lifetime. After you feel you're getting done with this process, help them to engage in this in the next step. We should always have a spiritual guide helping us to grow. The mentor always seeks to facilitate spiritual growth in response to the perceived spiritual and personal needs of the mentoree. You cannot perceive their needs if you don't have a relationship with them, which is why it's important to walk alongside them, get to know them, and spend time in these conversations. Another aspect of being a mentor is the coach. You're going to also be a coach to these people. The coach's central thrust is to provide motivation and impart skills and application to meet a task or a challenge. You're definitely going to be coaching them. As a minister, anybody you mentor, you will be coaching to some degree. How are they preparing to do their jobs? How are they preparing to even look for their new tasks, for their new assignments? This aspect is typically, again, initiated by the trainee. I'm looking for a coach. I think of the Rocky movies. I'm a Rocky fan. I love them all. And so, you're seeking that coach, that guy to lead you, to train you in this aspect. Potential coaches who are aware of people who need coaching should also feel free to offer. I've been praying for you, and I wonder if I could be of some help. So you need to be praying also for those that you're going to be coaching. How can I be helping them? Once you find out who it is, try to learn more about them and find out how you can guide them in these areas. Expectations and goals should be set up from the start of the relationship, something that we established earlier. Always know what we're going towards. If I'm coaching boxing, right, what's my expectation? That you become this kind of a boxer. If I'm coaching in ministry, my expectation is that you start to lead up to this, that we've decided earlier based on your spiritual gifts, based on what you feel your call is, and we're going to aim towards this until we reassess and come up with a different plan. The function of the coach is to impart skills. You're going to impart with them the knowledge that you have, the wisdom that you have. You're going to impart confidence and understanding in the use of their skills. We want pastors to come out of this confident that not only do I know these things, but I can use them. I feel confident with talking to people. I feel confident with preaching at the pulpit. I feel confident with whatever skills that I have learned and to share. You're going to motivate people so as to bring out the best in them, usually stretching them beyond what they thought they were capable of. Please take this seriously. Don't just do this task and say we're going to get you by. The status quo is why the church is in the shape that it is now. We need to aim higher and push them and stretch them and help them to reach that potential that only God sees in them. Model the importance of learning the basics of a skill, a process that will prove valuable in all of life. We know this as pastors. If we're not modeling it, we can't expect to coach it or to teach it. Point to mentorees to other appropriate resources and link them up with them. Listen, if you're a coach and you're trying to teach them in an area and they say, hey, I really want to learn more of this and this isn't your forte, then find that place for them. Help them to link up with another person. Someone may be under Pastor Rick and he says, I really feel like I'm going to start moving towards evangelism. And Rick say, hey, you know what? You need to start talking to Arnie a little bit too. Let me hook you up with him and he'll discuss what this might look like for you and maybe help to shift that with you and we can see how that process is going to go forward. So as a coach, you need to know where to point them to as well. And observe mentorees in action. You want to watch them so you can assess them. A good coach watches what the player is doing, what their trainee is doing. Watch them, see how they're doing. Don't be afraid to, everybody live casts anymore. You can watch the sermons, you can listen to them. Check those out once in a while or find out what they're doing and talk to others. Go visit them at some place and observe how they're doing ministry so that you can make an assessment as a coach and help them train in the areas that they need. Evaluate the mentoree's experience, give feedback to enhance self-learning and development. You can't evaluate something if you're not watching it. And an evaluation of ministry is difficult because ministry is so in-depth. It is so a part of not just the sermon, but it is a part of their very life. So you want to watch how they live, what they're doing. This may come out wrong, but don't be afraid to Facebook stalk them. Seriously. Because you can evaluate a lot from a person by what they're doing. There's a reason the police do it. It tells you a lot of truth. It tells you a lot more about them. And you may say, hey, you know what, I've seen this and it's inappropriate. I had a young man that I was mentoring before I was a men's pastor. And on his Facebook, he was kind of leading it. And one day he got mad and he just very bold letters, just the F-bomb all the way across it. And I was like, whoa, maybe we need to have a talk about what you're doing in your ministry. Okay, there are also other type of mentors which are more occasional here and there. In your process as a mentor, these are also areas that you're going to touch into. The occasional coach doesn't take the place of the discipler, spiritual guide, or coach. Instead, they make special developments and contributions at appropriate times. You're going to have audibles called on you. You're going to have instances where you're going to shift off of this direct walk towards their ministry and deal with this one issue at a time or this one experience at a time. There's the counselor. Many of us know how that this is a part of what it is to be ministry. The central thrust of the counselor is timely advice and impartial perspective on the mentoree's view of self, others, circumstances, and ministry. In my relationship, for instance, with Larry, we had a very specific what this was supposed to look like, and it kind of adapted and changed a little bit. But every once in a while, we'll talk, and I'll say, hey, I want to talk off subject about something and get your input, not as a mentor, but as a counselor in this area, or we'll seek that with other people. Be ready for that, and be ready to do that. It's going to happen if you have a proper, intimate relationship with your MIT. The major function of the counselor is encouragement, a soundboard. I'm not good at this. If someone tells me a problem, I assume they want a solution. Me and my wife have this battle all the time. She'll tell me something and I'll try to give her a solution. And she finally had to tell me, if I tell you something, I don't want you to answer it. I want you to shut up and listen to me and be empathetic. And I think, what kind of ridiculousness is this? But this is reality, right? This is why Aaron's a better husband than I am. I'm sure he listens better than I do. Well, these are real things that we need to do as pastors. Be a soundboard. Allow major evaluation. Hey, I'm looking at this. What do you think? I don't think you're ready for this. A district pastor may be considering a church. What do you think about this? I'm going to be honest with you. Between me and you, I don't think you're ready for it. Or between me and you, I think you need to ask for this and push for this. Perspective. Give them a different direction. It's easy for us to get caught up in our local churches. When I was at Crossroads, we were isolated. I didn't know what it meant to be a part of the Nazarene church. We were kind of our own little thing right there on this island. And so it's difficult to get a perspective outside of that. Even when I would go to Pastor Dave, who's willing to help with stuff, his perspective is still inward. Having this mentor relationship helps to get a different perspective from someone outside who does nothing else from it. I love that. Me and Larry are very different people in our stuff. He likes the Cardinals. I don't get that. God obviously prefers the Cubs. Give specific advice in areas and linking. Again, we're going to link them up to resources. A good counselor is going to send you to somebody who can help you with this better. If someone says, hey, I'm having an issue with this, you can only help them so far. One of the big mistakes or misunderstandings that's very dangerous as pastors is we believe we're professional counselors. We're not. We're not therapists, and it's not our task, and we should not do it. Not only should we not do it, it's unethical, it's illegal for us to try to do it, but we should be able to put people with the proper areas that they need. And so in this area, we might say, hey, I'm not equipped to help you with this, but let me point you to someone who can, or an area that can. And give major guidance, obviously, in our direction, and offer inner healing for people. Another aspect is the teacher. This should go without saying. The central thrust of the teacher-mentor is to impart knowledge and understanding of a particular subject. Teach me how to do this thing. I don't get it. One that's probably going to come up is, I'm really worried about when they question me about sanctification in my ordination. Prep me for that answer, right? We don't want to prep people for an answer. We want to teach them in a manner that they understand it, that they can speak it out in their own words succinctly. And then this is going to come in a lot of different areas. I use that one as an example, but obviously there are more. The function of the teacher: know what resources are needed and available, available, or who to approach in order to find out. We don't always have to have the answer. This is a really difficult for me. I'm an arrogant person. I truly am. I truly want to know the answer for everything and share everyone and do that on my own. And it's not fair. One of the most difficult things and the most blessed things for me to finally be able to do is to say, I don't know. But if I don't know, that's okay. We're going to help you find somebody who does. And this is a part of being the teacher, knowing not only what we know, but what we don't know and where to look for those areas. Linking mentorees to resources. In our familiarity with our Nazarene resources are great. One of the things I love about this denomination, we're not short of resources. Man, you want them. We've got something for everything. We've got CLT. We've got the clergy development. We've got NMI. We've got resources for resources. We've got universities who are linked to other things. And we are not lacking for resources. We, as the mentors, need to go forward and start to learn about these, not only so we can use them, but so we can point people towards them as well. Organize and impart knowledge to mentorees. Show relevance and knowledge to their situations. Help them to apply this in actual context. Show how to use perspective from which to assess. How do I need to step out of where I'm at and look at this from a different perspective and understand why I'm wrong? I remember calling Larry one day. I was really excited. Some things that happened at the church, and I knew that I was so right to get to gripe. And I was excited to call him and say, yeah, you have the right to be mad. And I was like, and I told him the story, and I was ready. And he says, and he gave me that, you really need to quit whining, and if you're going to be in ministry, you don't have the right to get offended speech. I thought, wow, that's not what I was expecting. But he allowed me a different perspective. Look at it from this perspective. Look at it from that perspective. Motivate mentorees to continue learning. This is also the function of the teacher, to give that love for learning. This is something that we desperately need to do on our districts. I get brokenhearted when I hear people say, I've been questioned when I decided to go back to school. Why? Why would you do that? After all, you're ordained, that's all you need, your street knowledge and your love, and God equips you with all things. And I get brokenhearted when I hear that because we have a fear of learning. God calls us to learn more. If we're going to proclaim that what we say here is really important, if we really believe this to be the most important message in all of creation, then wouldn't it behoove us to do everything we can to learn as much about it so that we can share it in a more applicable manner? If my child needs heart surgery, I want the most educatedly trained doctor out there. I don't want somebody who just got enough by to get a degree. He might be able to do it, but I want the best one out there. And if I'm going to share a message, then we should also want them to want to be that person, to always learn more, to always be better educated, to be better able to share this message with other people. And finally, the sponsor. The sponsor's central thrust is providing career guidance and protection as a leader moves within an organization. This is part of what I'd love to see out of this mentoring that's important. We need someone to go, we want our mentors to become a sponsor, especially towards the end of this process, to say, okay, now you're done. When I got done with my course of study, and I got my district license, I had one path that was given to me. I called Dr. Huff, tell him I'm ready, and if something comes up, there you go. And that was it. Now, that's all a lot of people are getting. As a sponsor, you're able to take your knowledge, your ability, and say, you know what? Let me help you out. I think you would be great in Illinois. I think you would be great on the NorCal district, on the SoCal district. You know what? You would be great even, honestly, in England. You'd be great in New Zealand. And go before them and say, I'm going to help to sponsor you and help you to find that path so that when you're done in this, we're not skipping a step and you're twiddling your thumbs waiting for the call. You're looking out there and we're starting to reach out, and you become that one to help to sponsor them within the organization, which is the Nazarene Church, and say, here's where we're going to help you to go to. Or maybe you're done with this and now you need to go to the Masters. I'm going to help hook you up with NTS, with Point Loma, or whatever it is, and help them in this. This sponsorship aspect is very important because it's going to show not only that we are willing to go alongside them, but we want to help place them and push them and say, I am so excited about what God is doing in you and what I've seen God do in you, that I'm willing to put my name out there as well and say, this person would do well here. So becoming their sponsor is a very important part. Now, if this is done in the context of the ministerial, of the mentoring program, it should always be done with full disclosure to the local pastor and the DS. Don't have a district license guy get him a job and not tell their local pastor or the DS that you were trying to find them a job at Roxana or wherever it is. Speak to their local pastor. Say, hey, you know what? I've been talking to this person. I think they would do great here to the DS. We're trying to find them some stuff here. Or if you have something that looks like this is where they would fit in this kind of a church, in this kind of a situation. Maintain a balance between the good of the organization and of the mentee. Sponsors are not self-seeking. Don't say, wow, I've been sponsoring you, doing great, can't wait to get you at my church. We are building the kingdom. One of the things I love, blew me away about Dr. Huff, I went to my first DCPI. We were in San Diego, and the one I signed up for when I was there, me and Joe Schreffler were the only guys in the room who weren't DSs. It was Dr. Huff in a room full of DSs taking the Churches Planting Churches course. And in the middle of the teachings, Dr. Huff gets a text, because Dr. Huff is always on his phone. And he gets a text, and I even forget the name of the guy, but apparently this person had texted Dr. Huff, said, I'm looking for a church to start planting a church, and I wanted to talk to you about that. And this person was very well known in the church because Dr. Huff, someone stop everyone. I just got a text, and I'm tempted to keep this for myself because I'd love to have this guy. And he says the name, and everybody's ears perk. And I'm like, who? And Joe's like, this guy's a cowboy. And he says, this guy's looking for a church. So if one of you guys know something he's looking for, man, I'm here to build a kingdom, not my district. I thought, man, that's awesome. That's what we need to be as mentors. Help them to be kingdom-oriented, to build this, to say, you know what, I'd love to have you here. You honestly, you would do so much better in Colorado, or you would do so much better under Mark Bain somewhere, or you know what I mean? Help to sponsor them and find them to grow them. And then very quickly, we'll finish here, the 10 Commandments of mentoring. First off, relationship. The stronger the relationship, the greater the empowerment. It makes nothing but sense, right? Purpose. Expectations should be expressed, negotiated, and agreed upon at the beginning of a mentoring relationship. Regularity. It is better to talk this over and set some ground rules both for the regular meeting times and for impromptu interactions. Clarify these issues early in the relationship. Very quickly, please take this part serious. This is why regularity is important. Do not go in there saying, well, we're going to just try to get together once a week or once a month and we'll make it happen. It's not going to. I'm going to burst some bubbles now. It's not going to. If you do not have a scheduled day and time, it won't happen. I can guarantee you that. It has never happened in the history of mankind. It will never happen. Set a time and make this a part of it. Accountability. Agree together how you're going to establish and monitor mentoring tasks. The heart of empowerment lies not only in what the mentor shares with the mentoree, but also in the task the mentor gives to the mentoree. Accountability is the prod to make sure this happens because change is difficult and rarely takes place without it. Hold them accountable. Next week when we talk, I expect 3 questions from you that have to do with this, and we're going to have some deep questions. Or next week when we talk, you're going to have answered these questions in this many words. I did a gentleman once. He should have been a pastor. He could not tell a simple story without going all the way around the block. So I told him, in 5 sentences or less, I want you to describe this. Yeah, I can in 5 points or less, each with 23 subpoints. Communication mechanisms. It's important to discover timing and procedures so that when the opportunity comes for correction, challenge, and it will, we're ready for it, can anticipate a mature response. In other words, let them know, listen, if this comes up, I'm going to handle it like this. This is how I'm going to handle this. Here's how I expect you to handle it. So when a situation comes up, they're not taken aback all of a sudden, because all of a sudden Aaron says, man, that's pretty serious. We probably need to talk to the district superintendent. Confidentiality. A mentoring relationship must honor the participants' personalities and feelings about confidentiality. You will have to explore this with each individual mentoring relationship you set up. In counseling, you should consider all things confidential and not to be shared with others without permission. For other mentoring relationships, you both need to make it clear when something you share should be treated as confidential. Such a simple statement to each other may free you to speak openly and may save much grief later on. Please keep this part in mind. The life cycles of mentoring. When you enter a mentoring relationship, don't expect it to last forever. Set realistic time limits. Have an exit point where both parties can leave without bad relationships. We're going to do this until you're done with the process, and at the very least, we're going to reevaluate our relationship if we're going to continue to have one like this. We're also going to continue this through an evaluation, and if halfway through this we feel it's not working, then we're going to work together to try to find someone with which it will work. Have open doors where inviting to continue can be open, and recognize the necessity of a time limit in any mentoring situation. Evaluation. Wise mentors will use the 3 dynamic factors: attraction, responsiveness, accountability, and empowerment to help them evaluate the ongoing state of the mentoring venture. Is this going to work? Listen, sometimes they're not going to. I've already conceded that. I'm going to put relationships together and it ain't going to work. I ain't eHarmony. But we are going to try our best to make it work, and when it doesn't, we're going to evaluate it, and like mature Christians, we're going to make decisions as necessary. And then expectations, use evaluation and feedback to modify your expectations so that they fit your real-life mentoring situation. Lack of meeting ideal expectations does not have to be the source of dissatisfaction in mentoring. Reality. I'm not driving to Roswell once a week, and I know Larry isn't going to come up to Los Alamos. I've asked him to. He refuses to make that trip every week. I'm working on it. But we work on those expectations, we make calls, we do whatever it is that we have to do. And then finally, closure. Begin with an end in mind. Happy ending for a mentoring experience involves closure, in which both parties evaluate, recognize how and where empowerment has occurred, and mutually end the mentoring relationship. What frequently happens in successfully closing mentoring is an ongoing friendship that allows for occasional mentoring and future interweaving of lives as needed. So then don't forget this final step commandment. Bring closure to the mentoring relationship. This is probably the most violated of all commandments and the most detrimental. Your relationship with your MIT will not end at ordination. It shouldn't. Your relationship as that mentor may, but you'll always be a part of their lives. Prayerfully and hopefully what will happen is that they'll be able to call you 20 years down the line and say, hey, I'm mentoring someone now, and they're going through a crisis situation. And I look forward to the day when Ken says, man, I remember talking to you 20 years ago about that, and we went through this same thing. Or Susan talks to someone, and these things come up. You need to make sure that relationship is always there. And so closure is important so that we know, listen, we're not severing ourselves, but we're changing the dynamic of what this relationship looks like. Our goal overall on this is to make sure that we're connected. It broke my heart when I got to Los Alamos and there's a church 30 minutes away and they have nothing to do with each other. I mean, that's ridiculous. We are part of an amazing denomination, an amazing group of clergy, an amazing group of ministers. And we need to develop relationships so that we have each other, so that we can connect with each other, so we feel confident with that. And we need to make sure that the next line of pastors coming up feels absolutely a part of a very real family. Like they have a seat at a very big table with a whole lot of people, and it matters what they say and who they talk to. And it genuinely feels like a family reunion every time we go to a district assembly or to gatherings or whatever it is. This mentoring is going to strengthen that. It is going to empower our pastors. It is going to help us, even as those who've already gone through this process, to grow. You will not, I promise, you will not have a relationship with a mentoree where you don't grow as well. And so I pray that we would do this. I pray that we would encourage others to do this, and that we would take this so serious and prayerfully and just do whatever we can for it. Let me pray. Father, I love you. I thank you, Father, for the work that you do. I thank you that you would take just a wretch like myself, and you'd be willing to use us, that you would use so many other people here, Father, that you have this huge army that you're already calling for to go forth and to share your light and your love and hope. And I pray, Lord, that you would help us to just usher in your presence, to seek it, to bring unity, to bring purpose. Father, tomorrow is Pentecost Sunday. Let us remember that as we do this, that the call was to use the Holy Spirit to come together and to unite as one church that could boldly go forward and just share light and hope in this world. Help us to do that, each one of us, Father. Give us a passion and love. I pray this in Jesus' precious name, Lord. Amen. Thank you so much.